What is going on, guys? Welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Now, today we have some special guests on today. We have Peter and Jeremy from Reef News Network on today, and we're going to do a little bit of a live stream slash podcast recording. So something a bit different today. I think it'd be fun. How are you doing today, boys?
Good. How are you doing?
Wonderful, thank you.
How are things up in the Great White North?
Not white anymore, which is good. We had like a nice big dump of snow, then it went away, and the leaves haven't even fallen off the trees yet, so it's kind of a weird intermission time, but overall pretty good.
Yeah, we actually had a full day of it snowing. It never accumulated. I mean, maybe on the grass here and there, it got a little white, but it was beautiful out, like just nice, like heavy snow all day long with none of the headache of having to clean it up. And now it's kind of bounced back. I think this weekend we're supposed to be back up in the 70s, but it's 2020, so why not have all the seasons in a week?
Right, exactly. 2020 is just I don't know, it's a special year.
Yes, it is.
It is indeed.
Exactly.
Oh, man. Devin,
so just for you guys,
your tank's been up 9 months, the peninsula?
I was shocked too, actually. I went back and looked at one of my old videos and looked at the date. I was like, oh, it's been 9 months. Whoa. Give or take a week or so. Crazy, eh?
I couldn't believe that either. I mean, I was flipping through YouTube and it came up in my feed and I was like, no way. Like, he just went and got that the other day. Like, I just remember him like scaping that.
Maybe it's 8 months. I don't know. It was January, February, depending when you count the getting it wet date. But yeah, pretty crazy.
Oh, so was that 9 months from pickup or 9 months from getting it wet?
I don't know. I just looked at one of my old YouTube videos and looked at the date. And it was like 9 months ago. I was like, it's been 9 months. So there you go.
Gosh. I love it. I love it.
Awesome.
Okay. So
I can't possibly count my date from when I got the tank to getting it wet as having it. It was like 2 years, right?
Something like that. Easily.
Crazy.
Easily.
It was just a very slow build up, right? You got to build that anticipation.
Yes, it was.
Yep.
Well, I can't say anything. I mean, it's got to be more than 2 years that I've had the 60 cube. I've been talking about that harem tank. So.
You brought it up
not even
again
existed
yesterday.
yet.
Yeah. I've been giving a lot of thought about switching out the BioCube in the living room with the 60 cube. The BioCube is looks great. It's doing nothing. It's got a clownfish and some sort of goby in there, and that's it. No coral. The light burnt out ages ago, so it's been a natural light tank for quite some time now. But the rocks have never looked better, and the fish are super happy. So I was thinking about actually switching it out and putting the big 60 cube in there and getting something a little more
nice
functional in the living room. So,
well, if it's working, you can't knock it.
That's true.
Okay,
that's true.
So those of you guys tuning in today, if you do not know these two guys, and you need your reefing fix on the go, Reef News Network (RNN) is their podcast. So make sure you guys check it out. Especially if you check out today's live one, then the non-live ones when you're driving around or mowing the lawn, perfect.
Devin, you're like this reminds me of like Saturday Night Live when they have like the 5 and 10 time host club for people that host the show multiple times. So this is I think this is number 4 or 5 for you that you've either been a guest or a co-host on the show. So it's definitely number 3 as a co-host. And then I think you were on like 2 times as a guest too. But you're like the distinction of the MVP of guests and co-hosts.
Yes. I'll take it. All right.
Yes, somebody's asking here in the chat, who are they? So if you don't mind, Devin, I'll give people a little blurb. So we are Reef News Network. We're an audio podcast, audio only. So I know a lot of people still call YouTube videos podcasts, depending on how episodal they are. But we are a weekly podcast, and we've been at it for over 2 years, coming up on 3 years now. We're 137 episodes in weekly episodes. We've missed 1 or 2 weeks in there for a couple. One was a weather issue, and I think one was a health thing. But aside from that, we've brought about an hour or more worth of content every week to you guys. We have a great group of people. The RNN Nation is our all our supporters and fans. They're out there. We have an RNN Nation group on Facebook, and we're over on Reef to Reef. But we just crossed 1,000 people on our RNN group, and we're giving all kinds of stuff away. So if you're not a member, feel free to go over because the drawing's still going on for 3 or 4 days. You can still get your name on the list to be part of the drawing. But
what can they win?
What's that?
What can they win? What are these bribes you're luring people over with? Come on now. Spill it.
Yeah, so Brightwell put in some salt. I know Brightwell is one of your sponsors, so they put in some salt.
Yep. Nice.
Quantum USA put in a whole like salt and dosing packages in there. Our good friend MetroCat, she's selling Reef soap. If you haven't seen that, it is a totally safe soap to wash with prior to putting your hands in the tank. It's got no perfumes or dyes or anything in it. She's giving some of that away. We have a $100 gift certificate to aquariumcarecenter.com in New Jersey, $100 gift certificate to OSA Corals or osachoice.com up in Rhode Island. I think there's some other stuff in there too, and we still got some people. Some people have been reaching out to me to put some other stuff in there too. We may very well get another C-shape pump in there. We did a C-shape pump in the last giveaway. Might get another one in there, and maybe even I don't know. I got a couple other people that I'm trying to get commitments for to throw some stuff in there, or I might wait and do more giveaways. But a ton of stuff going on. So you just go over there, and all you got to do is comment on the post, and you'll be given a number, and you're in for the drawing. And I think we'll be doing the drawing. What is today? Wednesday?
Yeah,
it is.
I think maybe Sunday. Monday we'll do the drawing on, or so whatever it is. But yeah. Anyways, yeah, hop in, join the fun. Devin's on there all the time, so it's a natural extension of Reef Dudes. So it's the Reef Dudes RNN fusion.
Yes, I
love
it.
Mold together.
North meets south.
East and west, actually.
Or that too.
Kind of diagonal, you know.
Yeah. As the crow flies.
Right. Beautiful.
All right, so that's it. That's all my selfless plugs for Jeremy and I. So I probably should say Jeremy and I are the hosts of it. So we are the two people you hear every week, and we're both in Connecticut in the United States. So that's where you can find us. And that's it. There you go.
Beautiful. Now today's topic is about reefing away from your reef.
Yeah.
Now, you guys want to roll that intro?
Which I guess isn't overly appropriate currently.
Yes.
I don't know how many people are actually like traveling or doing anything, but this too shall end, and someday we'll be back on the road for shows. But this is something I travel a ton for shows. Devin, you're at a lot of shows. You and I meet up. In fact, if it hadn't been for 2020, you and I would be in Florida right now.
I know. What
coming
up?
We got Waterbucks Blue Friday this Friday, so we would have been in Florida for that. But unfortunately, we're just going to be remote for it. But yeah, so it's a great topic. So we got a lot of always trying to figure out what to do. You know, a significant other that can help you. You got to call on friends. Very soon coming up here, I'm actually my wife and I and our two dogs and our best friends have rented a house in Vermont for a few weeks, and we're just going to take off and go spend a few weeks up there because we're all working remotely right now. And I had to figure out what to do with the tank. So in my case, I got a lot of automation going on. I just really had to figure out who was going to feed it. But your situation, if you were doing that, Jeremy, or even Devin, may be very different. So I think today we'll just go through and we'll talk about reefing on the go and what you can do, how you plan for it, and how you can set yourself up for success while doing that.
Yes. Love it. Well surmised, Peter.
So I should say, guys, for Devin's fan base, we are going to do this in the podcast format. I don't know if you've never listened to our podcast, we kind of have an intro and then the music plays, and then we, go in, we do a little back and forth that we kind of just did here. So it might be a little redundant, but more a little tank centric. How's your tank stuff kind of doing? And then we'll do a little news. We each have a news article, and then we'll go into the main topic. So stick with us. I hope you guys enjoy it. I really appreciate the Reef Dudes community and all you guys. Devin has a killer group of people out there always on here supporting. So I hope you guys like what we're doing, and I hope you enjoy the episode.
Yes.
All right, what do you think? We ready to do this?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, so Jeremy, I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna kick off the record. I'll give you the point. Just let's make sure. Did you guys hear the swish?
I did.
Okay. All right. So we know what's going on here. All right, Jeremy, you ready?
Yes.
3, 2, 1.
Another reef robot, natural cement, and reefing on the go, an RNN and Reef Dudes collaboration. All this and more on episode 137 of the Reef News Network.
This just in. You're listening to the Reef News Network. And now your hosts, Peter and Jeremy.
And Devin. What is happening, everybody? It's Peter, Jeremy, and yet again our all-star co-host Devin from Reef Dudes with us here again tonight for episode 137 of the Reef News Network. Devin, I'll go to you first, my friend. How the heck are you?
I am doing wonderful, thank you. How about yourself, Peter?
I'm very well. I mean, here in the U.S., we are recording this on Wednesday, the day after our presidential elections, which are still highly debated and being counted for. So we're got a lot going on in this country right now. So we're kind of sitting here waiting to see what the future holds for us. But overall, reefing related, I am doing very well. Thank you for asking. Mr. St. Louis, as always, here with us, my co-host and cohort. How you doing, buddy?
Good. A welcome distraction to the election. Actually, this is nice to be kind of sitting in a quiet room and talking reef instead of considering everything and all the possibilities.
I am not a political person, but every election year, it's kind of like the Olympics. I get glued to the TV, like watching it. And this has not been a rapid pace election, and it still isn't. It probably has days to go before we really know anything. But I couldn't tear myself away last night. I stayed up way too late for no good reason. I learned like nothing valuable, and like by the time I had gotten up in the morning, nothing had changed whatsoever. But it's just, kind of that like getting into it and be like, oh my god, and I know you have a lot of U.S. listeners, Devin, but you probably have some Canadian listeners too. So everybody's aware our country is probably heavily divided, I would say is fair to say at this point. So it'll be interesting
Definitely
to see what happens and where it goes. But that's enough talk about that. This is a reefing podcast, and all things reefing are happy. So let's get right into it. Devin, how have you been? How are the tanks going? I see the corner of your frag tank behind you. You just had your theoretical 9-month anniversary of the Peninsula tank, maybe give or take a month, depending on what the actual get wet date is. How's everything going in reefing world for you?
Overall, pretty good. One sad thing is I did lose my Aussie Gold torch, which brought me much sadness.
No.
But
that's terrible. That's a tough loss.
I know. I shedded a tear for that one. It was one of my favorites. It did make me test my tank and realize my phosphates are far too high and my pH is far too low. So on the plus side, it's a wake-up call to not be a slacker on testing and actually fix it. So last night I was actually up in my attic crawling around, and I mapped out where the tank was up there and drilled a hole down. I ran an airline down from the attic to my tank, so it's already starting to see the benefits of that. So
nice. Jeremy, you run a CO2 scrubber, don't you?
Yeah, I run a CO2 scrubber from Coral View. I got the ice cap one, and it's been great. I just basically connected it right into the port, the air intake port silencer for my skimmer, and it's been pretty consistent so far. It looks really good. I have 2 probes that read very differently, even though they've been calibrated multiple times. So I have to take it with a little bit of a grain of salt. I have a new probe to put in that I just haven't done yet. So that will be calibrated, kind of verify where I actually sit, but it is more consistent with both of them. So they're consistent. One is consistently lower and one is consistently higher, and they stay within the same parameters. So I know one is off, but it's still up and down at the same level where it should be, basically.
Yeah. At the end of the day, a lot of these things, I mean, to an extent you care what it is, but a lot of it is just the trending, right? Is it within normal values? And
yeah, it's staying. It looks okay. All right, I'm gonna not mess with it too much.
Fair enough. I mean, as you know, that's it. Don't fuss with it. Keep it simple and don't go over crazy with it. So, but Devin, you're running ozone. So how are you gonna deal with that? I know you talked a little bit about it in the video, but have you made any other decisions how you're gonna do that?
No, I'm still debating actually. I don't know. The ozone might potentially have a negative effect on the soda lime if I do put a scrubber on it. So I don't know if I'm going to do that. I thought about teeing it into the skimmer and do it that way. Now, I also have a UV I bought for the tank that I haven't put on it yet. It's on my frag tank. So if I move that over, I might not need the ozone if I have the UV. Like that may do the trick for keeping the water super clear. So we'll see. This is still a bit of a wild card. I just turned it off today as I unplugged it and hooked up my airline 15 feet up in the air to the attic. So
ozone you're running solely for clarity. That's it. No other reason.
Crystal clear water.
And you do have crystal clear water for sure. Jeremy, did you run your CO2 scrubber away from the tank at all, or you just put an external hose just more out where your tank is?
Maybe a foot or two away. I would love to take it outside eventually, actually. Or even just if I end up finding out I'm at a level I like to be at and just want to get the silencer in place and have that as an external draw from outside, that might be the next step, and then see if the scrubber does what it needs to do, or if it's even needed to be in place. So right now it's literally like 2 feet from the tank. I just have it hanging down off that CO2 scrubber.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. I know you said your probes like read totally different, but have you at all noticed any difference, even though your probes are reading different? Like,
have
you noticed? Okay, so you've seen an effect of it?
Yeah, so I had more like they were staying where they were, like one at like 8, one at 8, 4, 6, or whatever it is, and up and downs. And the ups and downs have been much less noticeable. It's been, instead of, spikes and valleys, it's been more like little hills.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Yeah.
More consistent. Less lows.
Exactly, nice. Which is the goal, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. So Devin, update us on the frag tank, the little gem behind you. What's going on there?
Well, the frag tank is a little ridden with algae, which I need to deal with. But aside from that, it's doing good. So I had, ironically, started and I had the good old dinos. So then I decided to purposely dump in lots of extra food to raise up my nutrients. And now I have hair algae and a little bit of Boropsis. So I'm waiting for some fluconazole to show up in the mail to eradicate that. And then we should be back to a happy place.
Any reason you chose to do that over like the Brightwell product for nitrates?
I had food on hand.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. I mean,
that's what I had. Quick fix.
Absolutely valid explanation. I was just curious if, some people have very strong feelings about, how or why to do it. So I didn't know if you had a philosophy you were adhering to, or if you just had food on hand. So.
Nope. I said, nope, nutrients are way too low. I have dinos. I need to have my nutrients. Shovel in the food.
Boom. Done. Nice.
Dino's gone, but now I have some hair algae and a little bit of Boropsis to deal with. So figured I'd just double hit it with the good old fluconazole and be done with it and get things back to normal and happy.
You keep any utility fish in there? Sorry, Jeremy.
Pardon?
You keep any utility fish in there at all?
Yeah. Yellow tang and a couple wrasses are probably the only utility ones. I got some clowns and some bang guides and a few other ones in there, but basically all the stuff that was in my lagoon tank got moved into the frag tank.
Nice. Dude, let's talk. So, I'm sorry, Jeremy, you and I talk all the time. We don't get Devin off.
Yeah, that's good.
Haven't had it in a while. Let's talk about all the fish you have in your tank. You're as bad as Jeremy is. You have what, 3 or 4 yellow tangs in the display tank alone?
Yeah, I got 3 on the tang gang. I got 3 yellows. I got a red sea sailfin. I got a purple tang and a hippo tang.
Devin. And then what else? Let's go through the rest of the list because there was like a million fish in there.
Okay. There is a Melanaris wrasse. There is a red-headed wrasse, who I don't see when the lights are on. I only ever see it in the morning. I forget I have them half the time. I got a blue spot jawfish. I got 2 flame hawks, cleaner wrasse, 2 bang guys, likely more fish I'm not thinking about at the moment. Oh, there's a chromis I see in the background. There's a royal gamma. Oh, there's a leopard wrasse.
There's an angel too, right?
There's a coral beauty. See, you forget how many fish are in there. So many, but it's a good chunk. It's a good chunk of fish.
Devin, kindred spirits, buddy.
Seriously,
kindred spirits, and a leopard wrasse right there. You didn't even talk about the leopard wrasse.
Yeah, well, he's awesome.
I have
fish poop is great coral food.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I have like 7 fish and an eel. That's like. And I feel like that's like I'm nervous about adding any more. Like I don't know. I'm just I don't know. I'm doing this all wrong. So you guys are just like fish, and
I love the fish, man.
I do too.
I want 10 more added in at least.
Now on today's topic, having less fish probably makes your tank easier to deal with and maintain when you're gone. Just to kind of lead in a bit of a side note.
All right, Jeremy, what's going on with you? So Devin's caught us up. How's everything in your tank world?
Everything's really good, man. Messing around with stuff, just trying to keep the tank happy. It's looking pretty good. I mean, I'm seeing some really good growth on my SBS. My LPS look happy. So overall, really solid. It slowed down. I had lost a couple of heads off of one of my hammer corals. It was a big colony with like 40 heads, and I lost 4 or 5 of them, like basically 1 a month for probably 5 months. It was and kind of unexpectedly, I feed very heavy in the tank. Haven't noticed any other things being really affected by it. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what is causing that. But it seems to have slowed down. I think maybe the CO2 scrubber has helped a lot with the pH going up and down and keeping one parameter a little more consistent. So that hopefully is coming into play and working with it. And then other than that, just new toys to add fairly soon. Some fun stuff coming my way. So we'll go over that as it comes. And then more fish, man. I want more.
What was the die off systematic? Like, did it start in one place and kind of travel along, or was it random?
No, it was kind of systematic. So it's like one little clump of heads.
And did you think about like chopping that off at all, or trying to split the colony, or?
Because it didn't look like brown jelly or anything. And I have another piece that I've broken off a couple pieces. So I didn't really think about chopping it apart. It's like a show piece of the tank. I'm happy with it the way it is. Even with a few heads missing, it's still a beautiful, beautiful piece.
That was huge.
And
huge.
yeah, it's like the size of my head.
Yeah.
And and the clownfish host in there, I didn't want to mess with that. Like, I felt like it would just take the tank out of balance. Just the way it looks wise, at least aesthetically. So I didn't want to mess with it too much. And I didn't notice any like brown jelly. It was almost like little bits of polyp bailout.
Question. This is a torch coral, you said, right?
It's a frog spawn.
Frog spawn. Okay. Yeah. Did they die off where the clowns were hosting, or a different spot?
Pretty close to where he hangs out. So I'm wondering if he annoyed them to death.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question too. You beat me to it. So
yep.
Yeah, well, that sucks.
I mean, it is what it is. I've had that clown since I started. He's one of my first fish. And I got him from somebody that had him for 5 years prior to me getting him. So he's going nowhere.
Is he still hosting in there?
Yeah.
Get some anemones in there.
I don't know about anemones. I have so much SPS that I've had bad, like, I'm just going to sit on top of this colony and kill it. Experiences that I can't do it. And I had Colorado sunbursts, man. You know that I love nems. I'll set up a whole nem tank.
Dude, it's a 220, 260
265.
Gallon tank? 265. You can find a place to put a bubble tip in there somewhere.
You can find a spot, but it doesn't mean it's going to stay there. Bubble tips will go anywhere they want. They're like, oh, that's a lovely spot. You have acros over top of them, right? So...
But now's the time to put it in, because you don't have a ton of corals in there yet. You really don't have a ton of grow out.
No, I don't. I have some nice stuff, but
my original shallow reef tank, I had some bubble tips in there. Didn't move for like a year. The one day they're like, oh, hello, nice acros over top of them, right? So 100%, you never know. Something could change. You know, one day they're like, meh, I don't like the spot anymore. It's time to move. Here's my vacation rock, right? And they move somewhere else. And there goes like all your overly priced acros. Exactly. So I understand.
Yeah,
I understand.
Thank you, Devin.
You're welcome.
Yeah, fine. whatever.
How about you, buddy? How's everything going with your system?
Yeah, everything is going great. To be expected. Still dealing with the stupid purple clove polyp, which I'm not going to say it anymore because I'm not going to get rid of them. You can't get rid of them. So I've been systematically, as I go in there and because I have some aptasia problems too, and you can't find freaking shrimp anywhere currently to deal with that. So I go in there with a little aptasia X. I kill 4 or 5 aptasia, and then I kind of pour, I don't know, like a 2 by 4 inch square on a rock and just kill a section of the purple clove polyps. But it's useless, because if I don't put something instantly there that can outcompete them, can grow, going to come back, and I mean they're a nightmare to deal with. So I don't know. This is the last time I'm going to mention them, because they're just they are what they are. They're there, and whatever. So, but aside from that, I actually took some pictures. So Devin and I are going to be on Blue Friday with Waterbox, and they asked us. We're talking about keeping big tanks. Both Devin and I both have some of their big line tanks, and I'd take some pictures and video of my tank, which I haven't done in ages because I've always been like dealing with nuisance algae, and for the first time in a while, the tank has really looked good aside from those 2 things I just mentioned. But even then, they're not to a point that they make the tank look bad. They're just more of a nuisance when you're really looking up close. And I was really liked. I step back and look at the picture. You look at the tank all the time, but it's kind of different when you take a picture and really kind of look at the picture and you're like, well, the tank looks really good. Like, so I'm happy. I'm happy with where the tank is and how it's going. And all the pieces and parts are working right. I've been really diligent. So I have 200-gallon tanks for people that don't know. I've mentioned it here before, but for anybody that's new or anybody that's listening on Devin's stream, one for fresh, one for salt. And then I do auto water change out of my 100-gallon tank, which I know is Devin's jam too. But I had a really bad problem. Once it emptied out, it would be like 2 weeks before I mixed another 100 gallons for no other reason than just pure laziness, and then trying to remember how many scoops of salt go into 100 gallons and all this nonsense. So I've been really good about when I visually see it low before, because I have sensors that will shut it off automatically once it gets to a certain level. But even before that, I'll pump in another 100 gallons of fresh. I'll mix it right up. So usually a 24-hour period, I'll go without auto water change, which is fine. And that's made all the difference in the world. Really, really keeping that consistent, being consistent with that. And because of that, honestly, and I'm doing like 3 gallons a day on a 190 system, which isn't, a ton statistically, but I tell you, I dose like 10 millimeters of part 1, and that's all I have to do to keep up in like the 9s. Like my alkalinity is like 9.2, 9.3 all day long with 10 millimeters a day dosing and just auto water changes, like nothing else going on. pH is always in the high 8s, so I'm a believer in it too. I mean, I think it does a great job. I am using I'm using Fritz Blue Box, so I'm not even using the high alkalinity salt. I'm using the regular alkalinity salt, and it's been great. So anybody out there listening, if you're thinking auto water change, I highly recommend it. I know Devin will too.
100%.
If you have the room to do a big tank and can automate it, it's the bomb. I mean, it's a game changer for sure.
Yes. I'm only doing about 5,000 mils a day, so I'm doing a little over a gallon. I got to step it up. I might double it to 2 gallons, but it is
water
like
change.
Yeah.
What do you use for a container, though, storage?
40-gallon one.
Yeah, see, you burned through that so freaking quick.
I planned it to to last about a month is kind of what was my goal with it. But
I'm sorry, say again?
I planned it to last about a month. But realistically, every like 3 weeks, I'm like, it's getting low, and I'll just like top it off just so I don't have to worry about it. Like same thing, you learned that lesson finally of not letting it run out. But
Right. Yeah, but you don't think even at that small of if you really feel like a gallon a day is doing anything on a system that size?
It's better than not doing anything. So yeah.
I know. I mean, we've had this discussion and debate before, but I feel
so. Wait. Real quick, Devin. So you're saying you'd rather do the auto water change than, let's say, just dose in place of the AWC?
Well, I do both. Like I have the calcium reactor that drips calcium effluent 24 hours a day, right? So it's always being dosed.
Right.
Okay, the water change is like to make you feel good. If there's something bad in the tank, it will dilute it. Yep. And, if you're missing something, you might be replenishing that extra little bit of trace stuff. So it's more of a preventative thing than anything else in my mind. Like I could probably not do one and be fine, but at the same time, it just prevents long-term issues.
Right.
So that's why I like it.
I feel like it's something I've looked at, but with the tank my size, I have 310 gallons working volume. I'd have to have like 100-gallon tubs like Peter does and kind of set it up so it would be worthwhile. So I'm not running through, a gallon a day on 310 working volume is not a lot.
And no, it's not. See, I even debated 3 gallons on a 190 system. I was like, should I go 5 to really make a difference? But I don't know. I mean, that's a whole different school of thought. And we will. And Devin, I guess we'll have you back again because you would be a very good person to have on the episode. We're going to do a whole auto water change episode and really dig into it and talk to some of the different people and get sciencey on it. We'll get science adjacent on it and really talk about what makes sense or not. But I don't know. There's a bunch of schools of thought and everything, I kind of read said, you got to at least be doing like 3 was the minimum. 5 was more what people recommended per day with me. But again, even with 100 gallons, I didn't want to be mixing every 2 weeks. I wanted to be able to go a solid month, with what I got going on. So, yeah. All right. Well, man, we're going long. We haven't even gotten to the news yet. So let's pick up the pace here. Let's get over and do some news because we got 3 news articles today. So here we go. Let's do some news.
The news.
Devin, why don't you go first, my friend, as the super guest and as the host of this stream that we're recording this live on?
Well, you actually stole my news article, so.
Oh,
Listen, I had that news article first, and then you decided to be a part of tonight's discussion. So, I great minds think alike. Let's do that instead.
Yeah, we can tag team this one. I'll lead it. You can finish it.
Okay, all right, that's fine. That'll save some time too.
All right, so this is something that I was looking at like years ago, like 3 years ago probably, and then
4 years ago, easily.
Yeah,
easily 4 years ago this came out.
So I'm looking at my tank and I'm just like, it's going to be a pain in the butt to clean that side of the tank with the stairs that's way up in the air. It's like, if only I had some automatic glass cleaner. So I've been eyeing this product for like a year or two, and it's like delayed. But apparently it's finally coming.
What's coming, Peter? So they say the I don't know how they're Moai, M-O-A-I, Moai. The Moai robotic cleaner is still alive. And this is totally ironic because just in our RNN admin group here, we have a great team of admins in the back end that do all kinds of different stuff, not just like admin the Facebook group, but do a ton of work all over the podcast. One of our admins, I believe it was Blaine Boone, superfan number one, has the RNN tattoo. How come you don't have an RNN tattoo, Devin?
Where's your Reef tattoo?
It's my whole back. I got a full back piece. But anyway, so Blaine, I believe, said he was joking around. He's like, I need a Roomba for my tank, and I said, you know, there used to be some like robotic glass cleaner with a camera thing in it. Like, I don't know whatever happened to that thing. And then like boom, literally 1 day later, this article comes out on Reef Builders from Jake Adams over there on Reef Builders, puts this article out that it's still alive. So it was one of those kind of like kismet moments where you're like, that's weird. Like either, you know, the world is reading our Facebook posts, which we know they are, but yeah. So anyway, the article, we'll link to it in the show notes as always, but it does say over 4 years since people first started talking about it. It's a robotic glass cleaner, and happy to learn this project is still alive. The exciting and ambitious aquarium device is not just an automatic algae scraper, but it has a built-in webcam that also allows owners to stream videos of their aquarium from any location on the glass. So this was super cool. Like, I think it has a limited market. Like for you, Devin, 6 foot. This is all day 6 foot, and I mean you have a really unique situation. But even if you didn't, even if you had a regular tank, like I wouldn't put. I don't think I'd spend the money to put this on a 4 foot tank. Like this has got to be traveling 5-6 feet to make it worth the investment. To have.
On today's whole topic, if you're out and about traveling, you're not at home, you're like, oh, let me check my tank. Take your little glass cleaner across the middle of the tank, and you can check on it. So that's kind of a cool feature of it.
So, you know, interesting point. That would be very cool if, and what we don't know yet is, can you control where it goes, or does it go like a Roomba and just runs its own pattern? Interesting. I'm a big Amazon user, and yeah, the whole kind of ecosystem there. So, and Devin, I believe you do too. You have a lot of home automation devices. They just came out with, and apparently there's all kinds of FCC rulings about this thing, but they came out with a security drone. So basically it's a camera and a tiny drone about yay big that flies patterns around your house, or can be sent to a place in your house to check on something if you're not there. And it's literally a tiny little drone, but in that case, it flies a predetermined pattern that you set and tell it where to go and what rooms to look in and everything else. It'd be very interesting for today's discussion if you could say, all right, boom, go to the middle of my tank. I want to check on this coral, or you know, do a scan by and show me, you know, front to back. It would also be really interesting to know it, and we don't. And I'm going to reach out to these guys, see if I can get a hold of anybody to either get them on the podcast or get some more information. But it'd be really interesting to know the angle of the camera. Like, you know, is it going to be a 90-degree field of view? Is it going to be a narrow field of view? You know, if they came out and did something like you know, like a standard like webcam and did like an 88 or 90-degree field of view, that'd be pretty dope. Like you'd get a good view of the bulk of your tank if you could have like a centering kind of mode to get it in there. But yeah, so it's interesting. something you'd consider? Or obviously, you're considering owning it, but something you would buy to
I'm
or
my mind is already down the rabbit hole of this like drone camera. You're like just doing circles around your tank. It's like full perimeter scan, lowers down, checks the sump, check the kitchen, the rest of the house. Okay, we're good. Back to the tank. That's insane.
Totally can. They just announced it at their event. I guess they're suffering some FCC regulations over, doing, which I find it hard to believe that the FCC can regulate something flying inside my own home. It seems like that airspace is mine to do what I want with. But it's supposed to, like, it's fully developed. It's supposed to be out soon if
Crazy.
it doesn't get shut down for other reasons. But yeah, it's and it's all I'm not going to say her name, but you know who she is. It's all activated by that and all remote activated. So you technically could, if that does come out, you could totally have that for the tank as opposed to this. But but yeah, it's interesting.
Crazy.
It was supposed to ship originally the summer of 2018. So we're 2 years long past the ship date, but it's good to see that they're still around. It's it's a challenging piece of technology. It seems simple on the surface. Something goes back and forth and just kind of cleans and does it. But cleaning the glass in the effective manner can actually be harder. Like if you don't use a blade scraper or something, it can be tough to get the glass clean. And then also, the ability to salt water. Let's just say it. Salt water is a horrible environment to do anything in. So have something with a full like programmable robotic chip in and a camera and everything else. But yeah, their efforts really have been focused on programming it and sourcing the ideal camera sensor and kind of integrating it with all the proper means of making it watertight and safe and sealed, because that's the other thing you don't want either. You don't want this thing leaking out anything into your tank either. Straight voltage, it's got to have some sort of charge. And there's another interesting question too. How's it going to charge?
Outside, there's like a little kind of dock you put at the corner of your tank and it just butts up against it and charges.
Is that what it is? Okay. Yeah. I couldn't remember like what it was. Like I couldn't remember if it just floated around or if it has a dock. So there you go. Yeah. I think it's interesting. I'll explore it. I have the 5-foot water box tank, so I don't quite have 6 feet, but I think it'd still be cool too, especially if you can live stream it all the time. If you could just put it on like, a regular stream and people could check it out and periodically just, scans around your tank or not. But I don't know. Cool. Awesome. I'm so glad this wasn't one of the mind stream things where, just totally fell apart and became a whole big debacle. And hopefully someday, I can't believe nobody is going to attempt to pick it up unless the company, and from what I understand, the way, if you guys don't remember, the mind stream was subscription based like disc auto testing thing for all kinds of stuff, nitrates and phosphates and alk and calc and the whole 9 yards, and was super funded and just totally fell apart. And I don't think they ever actually delivered. Did they deliver a single unit to anybody? I don't think I've ever seen.
No, they did. A bunch of people did have them. I know there's some early ones.
Oh, that's right. They got the units, but you can't get the discs anymore.
Pretty much.
So it's essentially a paperweight now. That's what it was. But I don't know. Hopefully somebody picks them up too. But awesome. Kudos to these guys. We'll see if we can get them on the podcast and see what they have to say about where they are and what's going on with it and get some actual tech specs on it. But should be an interesting piece of equipment. And good to hear. So Devin, anything more on that?
Nope.
Right.
My only one worry would just be like make sure it's smart enough to have that sand bed buffer, so there's no risk of it touching the sand or scratching. It's my only fear.
Big one, yeah.
But that's everybody, so I'm sure that's heavily taken into consideration.
I wonder if it would have some sort of like bottoming probe or something that it could like still like hit the bottom. I don't know. It's weird. I mean, that's got to be a huge thing because sand beds are so varied. Any kind of waves or anything in them. So
right.
Anyway, all right. I think that's it. We're good. Devin, we good on that one?
We're good.
All right, Jeremy, what do you got, buddy?
All right, so mine came from Science Daily. Coral reefs are a hotspot of diversity, and they can withstand heavy storms. They offer species a safe home. A team has now discovered that a very specific type of cement is responsible for the stability of these coral reefs. By forming hard calcareous skeletons, coralline red algae stabilizes the reefs and has been doing so for at least 150 million years. The article opens. Really cool. Basically, scientists have thought this and haven't proven it forever. They've really thought that this was the case, and this is what gave coral the stability. Scientists recently did very, very thorough examinations to go through and see and support and prove that that's its functionality, is that the red coralline algae is 100% like its calcium growth holds everything into place, even on soft corals, like their footing is hooked into the rockwork that coralline is growing on, which is really cool. It also says this algae is incredibly smart, which give or take, it's basically over the course of millions of years, they've had lots of events that have stopped them from being able to do what they're doing, including like urchins and parrotfishes that will just chew on rockwork, right? And eat up all of that. They've grown and developed and evolved to the point where now they've developed systems basically to be not tasty, so that these fish and urchins will eat off like green algae over the top of them and leave the red algae growing, which is crazy to me. Really interesting stuff. Yeah, it's just nuts. So really neat stuff. It's nothing that's like super groundbreaking as far as like the thought, but the fact that they have proven it, I thought was worth a mention.
It's who was it? Jeff Goldblum, Jurassic Park. Nature finds a way.
Yes, indeed.
So I've never considered intelligent algae before, but that is crazy.
Yeah,
it is crazy. It's crazy and it's cool. Like, it's stuff like that where in the grand scheme you're like, oh, that's interesting, that's kind of cool, but then you're like, all right, if excuse me, if algae has the ability to do that, can coral adapt to save itself? Can coral fit? Just really makes you really appreciate what organisms can do, and maybe gives us a little hope that despite what stresses we put on reefs and stuff in the wild as humans, that maybe coral can find a way on its own to kind of help and save itself. So
yeah, algae can find a way. We got this.
I don't know, my little optimistic view. So that's my slice of optimism in 2020 is coral will find a way. All right, we good with the news?
Yeah, let's get to the main topic.
All right, let's get into it here. Here we go.
Featured topic:
reefing on the go. So let's talk. So you're a busy businessman. You're on the go all the time. You want a reef tank? What do? But wait, there's more. For only $19.95, 10 easy payments.
Peter, you're taking my job.
That's it. Yeah. All right. So recently we posted up on a Reef News Nation group over on Facebook there, a topic suggestion. I don't know, a few weeks ago now.
Yeah.
Had some great suggestions. So if you guys are over there, keep it alive with stuff you want to hear. This one kind of jumped out. Jeremy picked this one and decided to run with it. It's something that we all have to think about. Again, this was a huge deal like last year, for myself and I know for Devin. Jeremy, you don't travel so much per se, but you work a ton. You're out of the house a lot. Yes. So you do have to think about, with big systems and multiple systems, you always have a ton of stuff going on, how you're going to deal with that on just a day-to-day basis. So this is more than, for the person that is gone for days or weeks at a time. This is also for the busy person that maybe you're just out of the house for 10 or 12 hours, and maybe you want to fish, and that particular fish requires, to be healthy and thrive, feedings 2 or 3 times a day, So, right. So this is really thinking about not only how to take care of the tank, but how to have the tank you want with the schedule you have, be it a busy work schedule, a busy life schedule, how to have a successful tank with your lifestyle more than just being on the go. So on the go can represent a bunch of things here. So, So go ahead, Jeremy, why don't you lead us into this?
All right. So first off, can it be done? We're going to give it a tentative yes. Like it's going to be a bit more difficult than would be required with a normal setup of a system. And it's going to take some serious planning, smart choices, and help probably. We'll hit on that kind of last because it can be some of the hardest thing to find someone that you trust to take care of your tank. So we'll touch on that part at the end, but we're going to start right off like from a full newbie take. Like you're thinking about getting a system going, but you travel a lot for work. And I think you can then kind of build your plan out from there. If you're, a 1 day a week traveler or a 5 day a week traveler, or if you're just not home often, how do you do this? How do you make it work? And, what's going to be the choices you need to make in order to get going and have a successful system?
Yeah. I think it starts with tank size. So, as you guys know, I should say we're on Devin's feed here, so maybe you guys don't know. So, but as for our listeners who will listen to this later, we just did a couple episodes about tank size. Does size matter? Size selection, reef tank real estate episode. Had a bunch of episodes around what is a good size tank. We're gonna kind of Jeremy and I are I'll give Devin a chance to say, well, we're going to kind of stick with bigger is better for this scenario. So if you're somebody that is not home a lot and needs to set up automation or whatever, bigger, in my opinion, and I think Jeremy will agree, and Devin, you can weigh in on this, is going to be more forgiving. Your swings happen a little slower when they do happen, and it gives you a little more time to react to them. But it also gives you more space and real estate by potentially having a sump or a larger stand to add some of the fancy equipment that's going. And this episode isn't at all about being on a budget. This is you have disposable income. You're a busy person working on the job, and you're just going to do what you need to do to make your tank run when you're not around. So that's kind of our opinion. Devin, what do you think about that for a person that wants to start a tank but knows they're gone a lot or travel a lot? What do you think they should start with?
Well, this person's not around because they're working a second job to afford all this fancy automation. Yeah. But I definitely do agree. Having a bigger tank, more water volume definitely helps out. Now, that also plays into not overstocking and not making a make work project for yourself, right? So it's reefing within your means to an extent. I know we're kind of joking about the budget thing, but if you have some crazy filtration, you can get away with a lot more, right? If you have a very basic system, you don't want to push your tank, right, and be riding that edge. So it's important to kind of keep your expectations reasonable with it and make sure you're building a tank that suits that lifestyle that you're trying to work with.
Right. Jeremy, anything to add to that?
Somebody in the chat already asked, what do we consider big? Pete and I say, like, starting off point, I think a 75 reef ready is like the starting point. You need a 4-foot tank. You have the good front to back dimensions. It's great for aquascaping, and it's enough room for a sump. So that would put you most likely in the 100 gallons range, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it in the past, and people are probably going to be like, "What?" But we kind of consider 40 to be the king size of the nano tank, if you will. That's still like limiting factor. A lot of 40-gallon tanks are in that all-in-one range too, or not 40 specifically, but somewhere in that 40. So 75, the 75 or the 90. Jeremy says 75. Here in the U.S., the 90-gallon tanks are a dime a dozen used. I mean, you can find those all day long. So if you're buying used equipment, 90-gallon to me is the steal that you'll always find a nice reef ready tank with a stand and everything else at a killer deal. It was just something, everybody bought them. So, but 75, to Jeremy's point, that's kind of the first size that most people, again, trust me, we know there's a million different people that do things, but that's really kind of the first size you're really going to think about. A sump, an adequate sump that you can put some decent equipment in and have some room. Like I have a BioCube 29 that I call a Frankencube because I've hacked it all up and have an external overflow, and I have a tiny little cube sump under it. But I mean, the sump doesn't do it. Add some water volume. I keep a very small skimmer in there, and that's it. Some like filter socks and stuff. But it's if I wanted to automate that tank, that stand and that sump's not going to do it for me. So consider that 75 is a starting point for large or big tank.
Okay. I'll take big. Okay. I think that's an appropriate terminology, and it's all relative. Sure. Like you said, a 90, you can find them a dime a dozen, but we weren't necessarily talking about somebody looking for something used. I think that 75-gallon rimless reef-ready tank is a dope tank. It's a nice starting point, and you can go for quite a long time with that and have pretty good livestock selection, pretty good coral selection, great light options, and have it look slick. So there are a ton of options. So you can get into water box or Red Sea tanks or Aquaforest tanks that are kind of that same footprint, maybe different gallonage.
Yeah. And that's an interesting point too, because a lot of the newer tanks, these nice like glass rimless tanks, have much smaller overflows, or even in some cases becoming very popular to have a built-in external overflow. So you actually end up with more gallonage in tank than you do with like the old 90s that had the big like corner overflow or the dual corner overflow or whatever. So whatever it is, but just kind of take a grain of salt there. If you're gonna be busy and you need a tank, 75 is probably the good place to start as a minimum size to be the most forgiving, or at least start to be the most forgiving and give you the most real estate to pack in all the goodies you're going to want to help you kind of automate. So, all right, moving into the stand. This is a weird one, but there's some things to consider here. So, Jeremy, you want to hop into this one?
What do you think, Devin? Why do you think rotated stands are so important? Any insight?
If you don't have room for equipment, where are you going to put it?
Yep.
I
like that.
Even on my tank now, I'm like, oh, I want to cram in more stuff. I'm like, I'm out of space. I have legitly been trying to figure out how to add a second chamber for days. And I finally figured it out to my calcium reactor, right? Just to get that extra little pH, because I'm on this mission up my pH. Yep. So I took a chunk of wood and built little spacers so that the little flanges are offsetted to like just squeeze it. It's like ridiculous, but real estate is important. Very important.
Yes. On top of that, that is a perfect point. You really want to note, like, if you're buying a brand new tank, manufacturer warranties are often voided if you're not using their stand. So take note of that, because failure on a seam is something you don't want to deal with on your own, first of all.
Or while you're away.
And you also would love to have that little bit of backup if it's a brand new system and something goes awry, that it wasn't because you used your own built stand that happened to not be perfectly level. Also, make sure whatever stand you use, if it's not a brand system stand, is perfectly level, so your system's level.
Yeah, it's important to consider exactly. You say, oh, why do you care about that in an episode about reefing on the go? But for that reason, being on the go, as much as your tank being able to kind of take care of itself or have people help you, it's also having the peace of mind to not be like every hour be like, oh my God, did my tank explode? Is it on the floor? Did all my fish and coral die? Is my house destroyed? There's something to be said for my water box system on the water box stand, that of all the things I worry about when I go to a show or something, that's never one of them. But I will say, in the past, in my younger years, when I would go find a cool piece of furniture and put a tank on top of like a dresser or a TV stand or something, it was always kind of in the back of my mind, like, is today the day that home goods stand that I found that looked cool, but was made in somewhere in a factory somewhere and like stapled together, is today the day that's going to decide to fail on me? So there really is something to be said about not the stand doing much for you, aside from giving you space to put the equipment you want to maintain, but giving you that peace of mind that when you're on the road, you're not going to come home to a total failure. And if you do, at least knowing it wasn't through your own accord, it was through something you couldn't control, and it would have happened regardless.
Right. All right. So besides the stand, I think sump is next up. While some all-in-one systems might work, the added gallonage and workspace, kind of like we were touching about, to set up equipment and tech is just a huge bonus for when you're on the go, because you're going to need some more systems in place to make this work the way you want and have the controllability that you want. So a sump is it's just huge, and it takes any clutter out of your display.
So Devin, I'm going to toss this over to you, but I've over the years, I used to kind of just think, all right, sump, sure, you're going to keep your skimmer, your heater, your return pump there. But the biggest thing I always thought about a sump was it's going to add water volume, and more water volume, the better, and flow and everything else. But sumps have really become a technological piece of equipment. Like, Devin, you ditched the factory sump that came with your water box, and you went with a GeoReefs.
Yep, I got a custom one made for mine, which I love it. It's like a work of art. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is. Devin, I'm going to toss that over to you in 1 second to talk about. But there's something to be said about thinking about. So even when you buy a system that comes with a sump and everything else, the deal is probably good buying a set from Waterbox or Red Sea or something with everything included, that it's still worth doing than trying to piece something together if you're buying brand new. But there is really something to be said about considering a custom sump to suit the needs of your lifestyle more than what it came with, because you got to remember the sump that comes with the tank is designed for the masses. It's meant to serve a simple purpose. Mechanical filtration, a place for biological filtration, nutrient removal and return. Some of them have an ATO system in them, or whatever the case is, which is nice and handy. But we have so many more options now that getting a custom sump or getting an aftermarket sump, which they're pricey, like no two ways about it. I mean, sumps aren't cheap to have,
I had
like
to sell my
Geos and
unborn child.
Bashy. I mean, they're
But
big bucks. So, but what it can do for you is huge. So why did you decide, Devin, to go custom sump?
I've always wanted one. I've always been too cheap to do it. Basically sums it. The water box is kind of like my last upgrade I'm going to do for a long time. And I know this, right? So I'm like, all right, this one's going to be like pristine, perfect. I'm going to pay attention to all these little things. So that was kind of one of my big drivers, was to do all the little things I've kind of always wanted to do, because it's kind of like the final upgrade for a long time for me until I like move or something, which was years away. So that was a big thing. I've also always wanted to have like lids on all the chambers, and just having everything built in, sealed, not worrying about all the evaporation. Like even my filter roller has like encased in a thing. There's covers around the skimmer, like all these little things. They're just, I don't know, they're just those little pristine touches. Like, do you need it? No. Is it nice? Heck yes.
There you go. So, and is there anything you added into that sump that you typically don't find with these off the shelf sumps that you would say is a game changer that people should consider if you're thinking custom sump or even looking for a third party sump?
Built-in filter roller for me was a huge one. I like farewell socks. Like I put filter rollers on everything now. They make your life so much easier.
Me too.
Speaking of being away from your tank, trying to get someone to deal with socks every few days, not very nice.
Huge one. We'll get to that too.
Huge.
I mean, that is a big to do, especially if you run your tank a little dirty. But I mean, my opinion's a little different on that because the Clur, Clur, which is distributed by Coral View, they drop into filter sock holes 4 or 7 inch. So to me, that's a perfect retrofit. So if you're maybe not having something custom built, but maybe you're replacing to something that's a little more customizable, like an off-the-shelf GeoReef or an off-the-shelf Bashy or something that is already kind of customized, but it's still a standard configuration. You can still run a roller mat effectively by having it kind of go into a filter hole sock. So but I agree with you wholeheartedly, especially when you're on the go. That is a relatively inexpensive upgrade that can be a huge lifesaver. A, because it removes a ton of nutrients, takes down on maintenance in general, but B, you don't have to deal with anybody dealing with filter socks, which nobody wants to do.
Exactly.
All right, equipment. Let's go. So we've talked about this before. This is kind of standard. Suggest the most reliable equipment you can reasonably afford.
Yep.
Don't cheap out on things. And again, people set up tanks for different reasons, but again, we're talking about not balling on a budget here. We're talking about, I got some money in my pocket, I got a good job, I travel for work, or I vacation a lot, or I work long hours. I'm going to invest in the right stuff. Don't get stuff that's expensive for bells and whistles you don't need, but get the most reliable, purpose-driven equipment that you can afford that makes sense. And this has a lot to do with things that are really going to bite you, like heaters and pumps. Those are the two big ones. Skimmer goes down, that's a pain in the butt, but your tank can survive a week without a skimmer, or even more. Your heater goes down or your return pump fails, you got a problem. So when it comes to those two pieces of equipment, it's really important to invest in the best that you can for those things. Devin, any opinions on things that you would invest more on than not, equipment wise?
100% always use a heater controller, because that's the most common thing to fail, and it probably will at some point. So I definitely always do that. Another big one for me is like a decent ATO, because that's the heart of it. If your salinity's off, everything else is off.
I totally forgot about that one. Yeah, huge. So, Jeremy, what about you?
I suggest, like we said, it doesn't have to be the most expensive. It just has to be really good, have good reviews, and it be a solid performer. Like the heaters, I love to run in tandem. I've always used kind of the titanium heat sticks with their own controller, and then run into my main controller. So I have double or triple safety, really. If one fails, the other will kind of keep the system going and keep it within parameter. The likelihood of both failing at the same time is incredibly low. So you have that backup, and you have the redundancy of multiple controllers saying, hey, there's a problem.
Yep. Exactly. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I currently running the BRS heaters, 2 of their heaters, and their branded controller, which I know it's not, but I mean, it looks just like an Inkbird controller. Either they're made in the same place or whatever the case is.
Aren't they shipping the Inkbird with it now?
Is it Inkbird branded? Or I thought that for a while they were saying it wasn't an Inkbird. Are they just saying it's an Inkbird now?
From my understanding, it's like the BRS version of it.
That's right. I know
a few tweaks to it.
I think yes, it's an Inkbird, but I think they have done something specific to it either within the software or parameters or whatever the case is. But so I'm running that, and for the longest time I didn't. I always ran a single, titanium heater into my Apex with no controller in the middle, and it was always in the back of my mind. I never, knock on wood, had a failure with that. However, I rolled the dice every time with it. So yeah, when it comes to heaters, best tips are run two smaller heaters instead of one large one. Make sure you have a controller, a controller period, but B, if you're running a Hydros or an Apex controller or something, that you still have a controller in the middle, or buy heaters with a built-in thermostat for that, extra level of safety. Yeah. Another thing you want to consider, I'm sorry, go ahead, Devin.
No, I got one other one that just popped into my mind. Skimmer overflows while you're away. Not fun to deal with. Not use. It's a pain to get someone to try and deal with it away. Mm-hmm. You can get on my big tank. I got that little XP Aqua skimmer safety, smart skimmer security, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. And the Hydros actually has one of their sensors for the skimmer, which is the same little sensor. So I'm going to throw that one on the frag tank, which are huge, right? 'Cause something freaks out, it will kill part of your skimmer. You don't have to worry about spilling and making a mess everywhere.
Yeah, nice. I totally forget about that too, because my skimmer actually has a built-in float switch, so it'll turn it off. So I never even think about that anymore. But good point. A lot of skimmers don't. But with options like, you guys have heard us in recent weeks here talking about the Hydros controller. Even if you were to buy the entry level, Hydros 2, which I think is going to be $199, there you go. $199. You can add one of these sensors to it and have a level. So even if you have a basic system and you don't want to do anything but control like a heater and a couple level sensors or something, great piece of kit for something like that to add to any skimmer. So then you can take a skimmer that wasn't smart and make it smart, and then have a level of redundancy. So these are the things you want to consider when you're looking at equipment. Maybe you buy a cheaper skimmer that doesn't have the bells and whistles like a built-in sensor, and then spend that money on a Hydros or an Apex or something to then do that kind of control with. So you just got to really think of your plan and think of what goes together. Yep. The other thing you want to think of is backup options on hand. So it's a pain unless you have a fellow reefer helping you out while you're gone. If something does fail, it's a pain to try to get somebody to do that doesn't know what they're doing it. It's a little less of a pain if somebody does know, but it's really a pain if they have nothing to replace it with. Heaters, why everybody doesn't have 1 or 2 spare heaters on hand at all times is beyond me. They're not expensive compared to everything in your tank. You should always have them, and have some sort of pump that can replace, even if it's not a bell and whistle pump, even if it's just a standard AC plug-in, 1-speed, whatever pump, but something, a
mag drive, whatever, exactly. Something that will move the water in your system.
But the key is something that has the same size output as what you're running on your tank. So if it does need to be changed out, it can just plug in and fit where it needs to go.
Yes. And also, having control from a distance is a super nice option. So there's a lot of equipment now that's fully Wi-Fi or app controlled, that are separate from a system controller. Like, they work on their own. They're kind of their own smart unit. CJ has a couple of things. Their pumps are Wi-Fi enabled, and you can control them from afar. So those are real options.
Yeah, Ecotech and their products you can get in there and control. One thing, a word of caution though, if you are somebody on the go, I highly recommend you try to subscribe to a single ecosystem. And what I mean by that is, like for the home, I'm an Amazon person. Even though I'm a total Apple iPhone user, the Siri product to me and the HomeKit for Apple is still garbage. It's one of Apple's biggest failure points, in my opinion, for where they could be with that. The Amazon products are just, hands down the way to go for easy integration. Same thing with your aquarium. Apex has a full ecosystem of products. The Hydros, the new Hydros controller that's coming out, has a full ecosystem of products. Ecotech has a bunch of their own products that work within their Wi-Fi app for an ecosystem, including lights and pumps. So really think about that. Think about the products and the brands you're buying and how they're going to work together, because there's nothing worse than having to go to 4 different apps to check, 5 things. Having one single interface to check the bulk of your information and be able to manage it is really, really the way to go. So just be
Yes.
conscious of that, and then be conscious of what devices work with stuff too. So like Hydros works with a ton of stuff right out of the box. Apex has modules for a ton of stuff. A lot of stuff has 0 to 10 volt control, which can be generically controlled with the Hydros or the Apex or GHL for that matter. I mean, I don't want to discount them too. They're another controller that is out there too. So just be aware of, look at the big picture. If you're planning a new tank or you're thinking about upgrading stuff because your lifestyle's changing, look at the big picture. Don't look at a single piece of equipment. Look at all your equipment as a whole.
Yes, 100%. All right, so let's talk a little bit about some system plans. There's kind of like levels of this. So first I have in the list as kind of the KISS method. So keep it simple, stupid. Have the fewest failure points possible for long-term success. Basic setup, easy livestock. We'll go over livestock a little bit when we come to choices down the list, but you want to make some smart choices there. Picking lighting, water movement, heat, ATO, and some sort of filtration, either a protein skimmer or algae turf scrubber are kind of your best bets if you're going to keep it simple. For limited maintenance and solid functionality, you're going to get the most bang for your buck with those items, and that will give you a operating reef tank.
Yeah, true. Devin, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'm always conflicted on this, right? Because I do appreciate just simple, less failure points, but at the same time, I'm like, hardcore technology, back up your backup, right? So I am back and forth like a freaking yo-yo, but each one definitely has like their strong merits. Like I know at the beginning we're talking about, okay, nice big tank, more water volume stuff, but I mean, you could have a 20 gallon, and if you did do like a 5 gallon, 1 bucket a week water change, you'll probably never have an issue because it's going to basically correct it with that 1 bucket, right? So if you bribe someone and premix water to do that, maybe that's your low-tech simple solution, right? Maybe you have a big tank and it's highly automated water changes. I mean, maybe not an issue. But yeah, so there's 2 different schools of thought, and I kind of appreciate both of them. I'm definitely the high-tech side, but
well, we'll get to this. This is level 1. You and I are coming up on the list here, Devin. So don't you worry. So, some other things you want to consider in here is not only keeping it simple with your livestock, but and limiting those fail points, but also feeding. I'm sorry, not livestock, equipment prior. Feeding your livestock is something you want to be able to easily address. There's a variety of auto feeders in the market. They're not foolproof. They can fail. A variety of reasons. However, they work reasonably well enough to assume that if you're gone for a few days, that it should do what it needs to do. And if it doesn't, for a few days, your fish won't be happy, but they can survive for the most part. But this is the place where like having a camera in place to be able to see it. And for something like that, even an external like Moment or Wise camera or something that you can check to make sure that the thing's turning and spitting it out, and they're like $10 cameras,
Right.
So these are the opportunities to have a backup plan. But it's a reasonable assumption. If you do watch the reviews and pick a piece of product, pick an auto feeder that has a reasonably good review rate and success rate, it's safe to assume that you don't have to go crazy being like, oh my God, did it work every 15 minutes or whatever your schedule is,
Right. And tank setters, to be honest, like if it's somebody that doesn't really know, they can sometimes do more harm than good. So you've got to really weigh your options there. If you have somebody that's trusted, that kind of understands how it works and isn't like, well, a little more food is better, let me give them this handful. Like,
Well, so it's interesting. So I'm podcast that I'm going to go away for a few weeks. And the first concern is, well, what do I do with the tank while I'm gone? So, all right, well, I know if right before I leave, I fill up the 100-gallon saltwater tank, that it's going to do its auto water changes. I run dual roller mats. So as long as I make sure they're, they have enough filter roller paper to go with them, they're fine. My skimmer has a sensor on it to stop it. My ATO has a sensor on the tank itself. So when it hits the low water level, it opens up the solenoid valve and refills 100 gallons and then stops when it gets to the sensor on the top. So nope, never have to worry about ATO. But the biggest thing I had is I had to have somebody come in and feed it. So I'm very fortunate that my neighbors and their kids enjoyed doing it. But I filmed a whole video for them. I filmed like an 8-minute video and broke down everything. Like, to make sure I wrote out instructions too, but to ensure, everybody's got a smartphone in their pocket. You can shoot a video with like no effort, but to ensure that there's no mistaking of what a cube of frozen food looked like, where this thing was. I filmed a nice little video and sent that to them and then give them written instructions. And I mean, they're not fish tank people at all. They know nothing about fish tanks. And they've, when I've gone away for weekends, they've successfully fed the tank. No problem, no issues whatsoever.
Devin, what do you want to say there, buddy?
All right. So ideally, if you have a reefing friend, always your number one choice, right? Someone actually knows what they're doing. So if there is an issue, they can deal with it. Or maybe bribe them to come every 3 or 4 days. Now on the food front, pre-portioning it goes a long way to make sure they don't overfeed. So break up, if you get your flat pack or whatever, break it up into roughly the size you feed every day and say 1 chunk per day, right? Just make it super simple, dummy proof it, and that goes a long way.
Snack bags. Those are the hands down the best is the snack size baggies that you get from Ziploc. That's what I did. I'd break off a chunk, put it in a bag right on it, Monday, Tuesday, whatever. Anything that like supplements like my aminos and stuff I put on the counter and label, with a sticky note, 2 drops in, put all the cups there, everything else. So yeah, as not, for lack of no better term, idiot proof it as much as possible.
Yes.
Like just don't leave the opportunity to screw it up. Like even if it seems excessively over the top for what you're doing, you're still doing yourself the favor in the long run. I'll never forget driving back from Florida in the motorhome, coming back from Rap Orlando. Chris Kaz from the Bandsaw Bandit from OSA Corals was on the phone, like screaming at his mother-in-law, like having this argument with her over the noise this ATO was making and how to like simply swap out like a bucket of water or something. And I was just like kind of cracking up to myself as I'm driving the RV being like, you don't have to have this fight if you just really kind of spell it out and have everything prepared. But it does happen. So do yourself the favor. You're doing them the favor, but you're really doing yourself the favor. You're not getting panicked phone calls. You're not coming home to a tank disaster. More over the top, the better. So
yes.
All right.
Yes.
The second
real quick.
Oh, what? Yeah, go ahead.
I have a good one, a good tip that I used at the school where I service tanks. I would do like the weekly pill dispensers. So it's like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I would put food in each little pocket set up for the kids so they could feed the tank. It was the right pre-portioned amount that I chose. And then they just look and said, oh, Monday's already done. It's all set.
Yeah, that works awesome for flakes and pellets and stuff too.
Yep.
And there are a couple interesting new options. I haven't seen them gain much traction, but I believe it was at Rap Orlando. There was a guy where you made basically a popsicle of your frozen food and put it in this dispenser, and it just kind of melted and distributed through the day. And you would make a bunch of these popsicles and just put it in this thing. It was kind of a bulky, intrusive looking device. Really, it was, it took a sexy rimless tank and really kind of put a big like hump on its back. But in functionality, it was really good. And then some other problems that come out, like Easy Reefs has their gel feeding products, which are really more for SPS and coral, but there are some fish and stuff that'll eat them. So you can get creative if you really need to with how to feed not necessarily frozen, but wet foods as opposed to just, flakes or pellets or whatever the case is. But all right, moving on here. Moderate's our next level. So you got the KISS person. Now you get the moderate. So still simple, but with the additional equipment tech that may add, some stability and functionality, to the system. So you're going to add some more gear into this. Man, I just got all tongue tied here. So you're going to add some more gear into this mix and make things a little bit easier. And this is going to be like a controller. And controller is going to open up a whole new world of automation for you guys. It's going to really allow you to automate things, obviously, but also have a really good visual look into what's going on with your tank. So quickly be able to take a look and see what's going on. How much you spend on this can really run the gamut to get what information you want out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the very least, having stuff on a controller in a single ecosystem allows you to, if somebody's taking care of your tank and they say this pump's making a weird noise and hold the phone up to it, you quickly open your controller and kill that pump and say, yep, there's something wrong with that pump, we got to figure it out, and pick up the phone and call Jeremy and say, Jeremy, go change a pump at my house, skis under the mat,
Yep.
so,
Yep.
so other stuff that you might add, you might be running both a skimmer and an ATS here, instead of just kind of keeping it simple and running one. Maybe you get a little bigger tank, you're feeding a little heavier, you need some more nutrient removal. Chaeto reactor, another valuable option here that you can kind of have for nutrient removal. Wave engine is a new piece of technology that is out, part of the Hydros family of products. Really kind of allows you to dial them up a bunch of different pumps and do schedules and all kinds of things that go on there too. So and maybe some sort of simple dosing setup might be into the mix here. Just you're kind of getting into what most people would consider the essential list of equipment.
Yes.
But kind of picking and choosing at this point. You're not over the top yet. You're really just kind of easing into the simplest. Your tank's lightly stocked, doesn't need a ton of help. You're just getting there. You're getting ready to become Devin and I.
Speaking of which,
well, so Jeremy, you're this guy, and I wanted to keep telling, but you're kind of this guy. You fit in this guy.
Yes,
like
100%.
To you, what is the key? What are the pieces you can't live without?
I am horrible at testing, like legitimately horrible. It's been probably 2 months since I've done any tests on my system at all. So having that additional filtration and systems in place, and on top of it, I also feed with a shovel, as some of our friends are known to do. I feed like 3, 4, 5 times a day sometimes. My fish are happy and fat and good, and I'm not losing any that way. So that works for me. So having that additional filtration to make sure there's no issue is what's really important. So I run the Chaeto reactor. I have a big protein skimmer for my system, and I have not filter socks, but filter cups that I change out on the regular.
Okay, cool. All right, Devin, we're this. Why don't you take this one? Because this is where you and I live. This is the world we live.
We both work in tech. We are both super duper techie, and we both love automation. So yeah, this is definitely a rabbit hole that sucks me in hook, line, and sinker, as with you.
Yeah, go ahead.
One thing we didn't mention earlier, high tech, low tech, whatever it is, another good idea is always have some form of a battery backup on a power head. Something if you do lose power, just make sure there's flow in the tank, because that will go a long way to saving everything in it. So whether it's a computer UPS or you get like a dedicated battery backup like the Ice Cap or the Ecotech or whatever, always a smart thing, especially you're going to be away and aren't going to be around to deal with it in the extent of extended power outage.
Yes.
Good plan. Yeah. And even if your brand Wavemaker doesn't offer a battery backup native, go buy an inexpensive desktop APC backup for $50. Something that's going to just allow that one thing to make water movement while you're gone for whatever predetermined amount of time. And a single power head or even a bubbler will run a long time on a small desk size battery backup. All right, advanced. What does it mean to be an advanced reefer, Devin?
It means you can control everything from your phone. Everything's automated. You have backups. Your wife calls and says, your tank's beeping. You're like, fine, pull up your app, deal with it, done. That's kind of how I'd equate it, because that generally happens. Sensor gets tripped, some alarm's going off. I'm like, I get the text, make it stop, and deal with whatever's making noise, fix it remotely no matter where you are. You're like, oh, hey babes, can you feed the fish? I'll put the tank in feed mode. You can just do that from anywhere. So that's the addicted hardcore techie style.
I agree with you. The fact that I can use my Amazon products to tell my tank to go into feed mode and do different things, like that's the next level. That's the stuff that most people that want a successful tank won't go to the level. Like I have an excessive amount of equipment to probably do a lot of redundant jobs for the sake of they do something slightly different that's cool. So I still want to have that one cool function, even though it does 4 of the same things that something else is doing. Being the advanced hobbyist means you will probably be the poorest, but you'll sleep the best at night. I guess that's the best way to equate it. So when I travel, I truly, especially now in this new house with the new tank and everything I've put into place, the only thing I worry about is a power failure or feeding my fish. And that's it. Like I said before, skimmer will shut itself off. The roller mats do their thing. The return pump will notify me if it has an issue. The water will fill itself when it runs out. The ATO pumps off of that. The dosers happen automatically. If the dosing fluid gets too low, it'll stop. If the salt water runs out, the auto water change will stop. I don't think of any of it.
No.
Am I way in the red for owning all this stuff? Yes. I have thousands of dollars of Apex equipment to kind of make all this go around and work, and hours and hours and hours of stuff and boxes of boxes. I think this is the worst part of being the advanced hobbyist is I must have 10 bins of different equipment that I've used at one point and said, all right, let me upgrade that. Let me change that. Let me do this. So I literally have bins and bins and bins of different pumps, different skimmers, different reactors, like you name it. I probably have some version of it that has been used at some point or the other. And I'm just not good about selling it, so it kind of just all sits there. But being the advanced hobbyist means you want it when it comes out. You want it if it has bells and whistles, but ultimately you have the easiest go of it because you've been the ridiculous person to get all the things that you just paid $500 to do something that's really, equates to, this pouring some stuff in the tank, but you had to have it and you don't have to think about it anymore. So now when you go away, you don't have to find somebody to do this anymore. The system does it for you. So the advanced hobbyist is the pinnacle of what a lot of people will say a fool's errand, but I probably sleep better than most people at night when I'm traveling on a trip.
No, yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, that's fair. Similar thing. Like when I go away, like I could put an auto feeder on, but I usually feed frozen, so I'm like literally asking them to feed my tank, and that's it. That's all I got to worry about. Yep. Which could be automated, but yeah, there's someone around, might as well just get them to feed it.
So I keep exploring like those options where you have the refrigerator and you kind of pseudo melt the frozen food, so it's more of a slurry, and you kind of try to dose it. But the food I use a lot of the chunky food, because I got bigger fish, and now that I got the eel, I got to feed the eel big stuff. So I never do, but I've thought about that forever, trying to automate that too.
I've thought about this actually. Nios makes a mysis that does not need to be refrigerated.
Oh, really?
I'm like, you could put that on a doser. You'd need a fairly big dosing tube to like suck the shrimp through it, but food for thought.
I'd say you might have to go maybe to like a third-party parallelistic pump for a different industry to get inlet sizes big enough to actually kind of push it, because most of everything in our hobby is no bigger than airline tubing, which is still pretty small. But I know you can get into some medical grade stuff that goes up to even like 1/4-inch tubing and stuff. Probably crazy pricey, but if you're really determined, there you go.
Yeah, I picked up a Watson Marlowe for my Calcreexer when I set it online, and that's not a cheap piece. That's like, it's used for like dialysis and stuff. Like, it's serious medical equipment.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, let's go here. We're running crazy long, and we're not even halfway through these notes. So, although Devin, you're live, you normally runs a couple hours, right?
I don't know. It's 45, an hour and a half.
All right, let's keep going here, Jeremy. Next steps, buddy.
Yeah.
What are the next steps? So you got your equipment. You know what kind of reefer you are. You know what level you're going to be at. You go out and you buy all your stuff. What do you got to do now? Now you got all your goods.
All right, we gotta figure out a maintenance plan. First and foremost, in my opinion, you have to have this plan. We've talked about it a bunch of times on the podcast, but basically it breaks down to outlining the steps you're going to take to keep the tank in balance and sticking with them. There are a large variety of ways to go about it. We're not going to say, hey, this is the best, this is the one to do, this is it. Find the one that's going to work for you and that you'll actually do, because Peter and I both at times have suffered from LARS, the lazy ass reefer syndrome, and you just got to make sure you're actually going to do these things. Is it a once a month water change when you get home? Whatever you're doing, figure it out, do that. I would say, as a note, if you're somebody that travels for like a week and then is home for a couple of days, and try to do that maintenance right away, right when you get home. That way you can examine, catch up with, enjoy your system, and have a chance to kind of see that the maintenance you didn't have any accidental detrimental effects on your system. Everything's good. There's not something that went way awry. I have a discus tank that I did a water change on the other day, and I did too much gravel siphoning, and I came down to the tank an hour later, and everybody looked like they were in despair. So I was able to do another small water change and correct it in 15 minutes, but I would have lost my entire livestock had I not done that.
Yeah, good point. Devin, what do you consider essential for a maintenance plan? Like when Jeremy and I talk about it all the time in the podcast, do you have a particular methodology you prescribe to for timing and
in general, or when you go away?
What's that?
In general, or when you go away?
No, in general.
Both.
So
okay.
Or do you? I mean, to me, the maintenance plan should be executed before going away if it falls in alignment. So I don't have anything specifically maintenance wise, unless you talked about like you have filter socks or something that need to be done while you're gone. Then you got to put that into your maintenance plan. But typically, when it comes to maintenance, I try to ensure if I have a pump cleaning or a skimmer cleaning or something coming up, if it falls on when I'm going to be gone, I'll bump it up and do it before I go. My travel is, I don't know, last year was fairly regularly, like at least 2 weekends a month. I was at some sort of show or traveling somewhere. So, kind of got a little more dicey, but it's still, I was home enough that I didn't have to be like, okay, when I get home on this day, do it, execute it. But Jeremy and I typically, we talk about pump cleanings quarterly, detritus in the sump and stuff, weekly or whatever, or with a water change kind of thing.
Okay.
Anything specific you do in any kind of intervals?
All right. So, water changes, since I've automated, amazing. Never go back. Love it. Well, that being said, the frag tank's not automated, and I haven't done one yet, so I probably should. Yeah. But the big tank, automated, absolutely love it. So if I'm going away, I'll make sure, the saltwater bin's full, the salt in there's at the right salinity, right? I'll make sure my ATO is full. Regardless, it auto-fills itself, but I would just make sure 100% everything's full, good to go before I leave. Before I left on a trip, obviously empty the skimmer cup, make sure your socks or your filter roll is still going to last that amount of time. Like, that's kind of the general stuff. As for my general maintenance, not really. I feed the tank, the dosing's automated, water changes are automated. So most of that I don't really worry about too much. Just kind of like the skimmer and change the filter roll every 6 to 8 weeks or whenever it runs out.
Yeah.
Aside from that, it's pretty status quo.
Here's my tip for you. If you are going away, do not do maintenance like pump cleanings and things the day you are going away, because I had literally had a pump, I cleaned it and then it jammed afterwards. The day I was like walking out the door to like go somewhere for a week or whatever, we were going on vacation, and I could not get the return pump to fire back up. Finally did, but I learned my lesson the hard way. If you're going to break down equipment and do a deep cleaning or something, if you're that person, like Jeremy said, that travels every week and you got to just kind of slip it in on the weekend, even more important to do it when you get home. So if there is an issue, you rectify it without being late for getting back out the door, and then just having to make that hard decision to be like, screw it, I'm going to miss my flight. Sorry, tank, and walk away from it. So
yes,
super important not to put yourself into a situation moments before you're supposed to be walking out the door to have a potential equipment failure.
Now, this is on the extreme side, but if you're building a new system, you could say have 2 return pumps, or have a spare of the same model of the main one in your tank. So if one died, you're like, hot swap, everything fits, same couplers, it's like 2-second swap, right?
Who
like
was
that's
it
the
that
extreme
had that dual
level.
head pump?
MaxSpect.
It was
the
MaxSpect.
MaxSpect
Is that
dual.
still? Do they still make it, or was that a thing that just never really took off?
I think they still make that. It's the turbine. I think they still have it available. I don't know if it's actually like you can actually buy it still, but it's still up on like websites like BRS had it, or Marine Depot or somebody.
That would be an interesting way, especially running on a controller. Have them wide together and maybe have a check valve in place so it's not flowing back into one. But if some of them failed, go right on your controller and fire up the other side of it. And
Yep.
So
now, Is it one motor in the same shafts, or is it two different motors?
I think it's
the
one
heads
motor.
were. Oh, is it one motor?
I think it's
so.
one
I
motor,
guess
but
it's one motor and then two kind of an
heads.
impeller house. I thought it was two physical pumps on one like power drive. But now you're saying that, I think you are right. I think you could plate it off but all right, skip all that, erase that, strike that from the record.
But
strike that,
the
reverse it.
consideration is, right? Like,
but,
even if it is different, if you have like a barb fitting, whatever, just have something set up that's compatible with it so that you can hot swap it if you need to.
Right. And always have that little bit of silicone tubing between your hard plumbing to give you the anti-vibration, but that makes a super easy switch in because you can literally back out any barb fitting, like, connectors, and then pop it on and you're good to go.
So I have used them on when I was using my algae reactor. You can get quick fit plugs for tubing, which could be a good way. You can get them big and they're kind of fast. So you could physically make a little longer section in that flexible hose for your return pump, put a quick fit in there, and then have another one set up with so it's literally boom, pull the pin, pull it, put the new one on, pin it, kind of thing. So that is an option too, if you're really at that level of being concerned about it. So
that's hardcore. I like it.
It is hardcore. Like it. That's it. So, all right. So you got your maintenance plan. You know what you're going to do, or you know what you're going to ask somebody to do. Either it's clean filter socks, change a skimmer cup, visually check things. If you have a list of things that need to be checked and you want reported on, make a checklist, leave that for them, but make a plan for maintenance. Make sure you think about it. And anything you're touching daily is something somebody else is going to be able to need to touch daily while you're gone if you have not automated it. So put it on a list, put a checkbox, have them take a picture of it with their phone and send it to you. So you make sure it's all done every day, whatever level you want to do, but make sure you don't forget. It only takes one thing for the plan to fail. So make sure you write it down and just don't be like, hey, Jeremy, can you swing by the house? Might take a look in the sump, see if this thing looks like this or if that thing looks like that. If this thing's making a noise, let me know. Jeremy's not going to remember that. Even Jeremy as a reefer is going to be like, what did he want me to look at? What's making a noise? I don't know.
Everything's fine.
Just write it down and be good to go. So, all right. So once you have your maintenance plan in place and you've put that down and you've either given it to somebody else or you've looked at those options that you have to do and you've automated them, the next stop is to look at your livestock plan. So yes, if you travel a lot, you're going to have some restrictions on your livestock choices based not only on the size of your system, but also based on the ease of care required. You're not going to want some crazy expensive finicky fish that normally you hand feed 3 times a day, and and all of a sudden you're going to go out and you're going to ask somebody to be like, hey, can you come over at 9, 2, and 6 and hand feed this fish for me? And they're going to be like, are you out of your effing mind? Like, no, I'm not. So the livestock plan is important, and this starts if you're existing, maybe and you already have something finicky. Then this plan includes figuring out how to make it as easy as possible to deal with that while you're gone. If
and
you're
the compensation required,
and then the compensation,
what kind of bribes?
About that. Always be
how
sure
much beer are you buying this person?
Exactly. But it's also if you're starting a new tank and you have some dream fish in mind, but you travel all the time for work, make sure that dream fish is pretty easy to care for.
Right. And there's certain fish like you can look at that really do better if you're feeding multiple times a day. Are you going to be able to handle that and have some system in place for it? Can you have somebody stop by daily and do feeding a frozen and you have an auto feeder on there that does the other feeding daily? There are options. You just have to weigh them out and know what you're getting into.
Right.
One thing I haven't done, but I've thought about many times, is on like Amazon, those little like Wise cams, whatever you buy super cheap, but they're little pan tilt cameras.
Yep.
Leave your sump doors open, have little cameras. You can like look down, look up at your tank, make sure everything looks fine. Like another potential option. You can buy those for like $50 and
not even 10. Those Wise cams are like, for the PTZs, they're a little more, but $10 you can get a normal one, but they have a super wide field of view. When I had my sump still in my stand before I moved into the basement, I kept one up in the top looking the long way, and I could see my whole sump and what was going on. And the refugium light I had was plenty enough light, but the LED lights that I had in the stand were Amazon controlled. so I could turn those on remotely if need be, and then still fire up the camera app and look to see what's going on. So those cameras, the Wise or the Moments, the other brand, I have a bunch of Moment cameras. They're so inexpensive and useful for just these scenarios. I don't know how I feel about just letting them, like in a sump, who cares? But like sometimes I'll set them up in the room looking at the tank so I can see, or have one near the tank. So when somebody's feeding, I can, and they think there's an issue, I can say, all right, well, grab the camera, show me. And, and they can see it. Great option. And you can often find multi-packs of them for short money, like well worth every penny. So, all right, where were we? What are we getting into? So
we're getting into the fish. Like we said, kind of avoiding specialty diets that can be harder to keep healthy. Generally, you're going to want to look for kind of peaceful community type livestock that will get along fine in your absence. Because even though in my opinion, there's not a ton you can do to stop fish from fighting with each other, even if you're there, you can't quite monitor it even and be like, oh crap, that guy's really beat up, I need to get him out of the tank or put him in the sump or do something different, change something. You're not there to do that. So make sure you're choosing fish that are generally going to get along with other fish.
Sure. Yeah. Good point.
Right.
Some other things to consider too here. Do you need a top? Should you have a top? A lot of people will roll the dice because if they're at home a lot, they're not overly concerned about it. But if you're traveling a lot, even fish that aren't known to be jumpers can still jump. Maybe this is a good time to think about adding a top to your tank, so you can maybe expand your fish. Because let's be fair, even somebody says a fish isn't a jumper, if something scares it, any fish can jump. So no matter what your livestock is, you're rolling the dice. I think covers. And I used to be really anti, especially when I got my first rimless tank. I was like, oh, look at this beautiful rimless tank. I don't want to, but you can get the acrylic tops. They're not huge money and they look great. Well worth the investment. So make sure you plan for that.
Right. Yeah. And even if you want to just use it when you're not at home and it doesn't have to be as pretty, you can put a simple kit top on there and be good to go. And then when you're home, take it off when you're enjoying it, put it back on at the end of the night, whatever it is, man, it'll pay for itself with one fish that goes.
Yeah.
Especially if it's the right fish.
You were on top in your tank, Devin?
Yeah, I still got to build the top for the frag tank, but my other one does. I've learned my lesson. I've had fish jump. My cleaner wrasse jumped like 3 times. I actually walked downstairs one time and the puppy's like licking the fish on the ground. I'm like, oh, great. So he probably saved the fish by licking it. Who knows? But he's like full of dog hair. I picked him up, put him back in the tank, kind of waved him around and started swimming around. I called him Terminator after that because he was like survivor. Third time he jumped.
I had the same thing happen with a fish when in our old house. Came in, the dog was sniffing around, poking out. I was like, what are you doing? I was like, oh my God. Picked him up all covered in dog hair, put him in, and he took right off. So who knows? All right. So coral. So, if you're setting up fresh, low demand corals like zoas and softies, they're going to be easiest to care for. Huge selection, colorful, diverse. One stable and established, or if you have a slot of time where you can kind of really be home to dial in maybe your dosing or whatever to get your parameters right, then LPS and everything else, or even easier SPS, aren't necessarily hard to care for while you're gone. It's having the time to get the tank parameters balanced to make them thrive, which is the tough time. If you're going to start a dosing regimen, you want to be home for a week or so you can really watch and dial that in and figure out, and test. And, so if you're really just home on the weekends, it's going to be really tough to get dosing dialed in again, unless you've really spent the money and you have a fully automated solution where you can, automate your testing. Maybe you have a Trident so you can see what your calcium and mag are doing. And then you're using some dose pumps and you can go ahead and dial in your, milliliters right there. So you could potentially do it remotely, but again, you're going to spend a lot of money to do it. And that's probably not for everybody. So the lowest common denominator is be home for a week or two to really kind of dial that in. And then once it's dialed in, then go ahead and take a shot at it. Start with cheaper pieces of LPS or SPS, because inevitably while you're figuring this out, you're going to lose some stuff. But again, not doable. Just you're going to need a slot of time in there at some point. So
right. Go ahead, Devin.
like you're saying, don't start a new system. Don't put on a new gear. Make sure there's at least like a week or two of you being around to monitor it, make sure it's dialed in before going away, right? Like I've had so many times I've had my new shiny toy and I'm like itching to open it, but I'm like, nope, going away. Don't even open the box till you're back. Like avoid the temptation to set it up because you just need to make sure everything's working properly, smoothly. And you don't want to deal with some, unforeseen scenario while you're away. It's just a hassle. So.
And something a lot of people might not think about is lighting is a big one too. Lighting, I don't think nearly enough people spend time dialing in and acclimating lighting as they should do. So unless you got a nice fancy light with a cloud-based controller that has an acclimation mode or whatever, make sure you got some time to really kind of work in and dial in your lighting too, because you really shouldn't, any kind of new light you're adding to the tank, you should really start it at a reduced capacity and let it ease its way up into whatever your full strength is going to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, agreed.
All right, last but not least.
Cleanup crew, man. This is one that maybe you don't really think about, but you look at some of the packages that are out there for like, oh, let's buy cleanup crew for this tank. And it's like 500 things are going into the system. These are 500 living things. That's a lot. There's a high potential for die-off, and that could cause spikes and whole new mini cycles, little things like that. So really just get what you need. Don't go too overboard. You can always add more, in my opinion. And start slow and work your way up with the cleanup crew, because if they don't have food to eat, they're just going to die off. And if you mix hermits and snails, those snails are just now food.
Even wrasses pick off my snails if they fall and get upside down, like you little buggers.
Yep. Yeah, well, at least then they're not wasting away, though. At least the wrasses are it's a pain because your cleanup crew's being diminished, but at least you're not getting die off and waste from it too. So, my opinion is that comment is most applicable for people that are buying these cleanup crew packs, which, in my opinion, are way, way too many, too big for the gallon per whatever size that they sell you for. But I'm pretty sure when they're selling them to you, they're already accommodating for die off in the number that they're putting there. So they're selling you 100 snails for a 50-gallon tank, assuming you're going to have a sizable die off of those. So don't want to buy one of those packs, dump it in and walk away, because chances are you could really spike your nutrient level, with considerable die off in the first couple days.
Yes. Yep. And actually another cleanup crew tip is, if you are looking to buy somewhat of a pack or do something, find some local reefer buddies and go in together. Buy like, because quantity usually outweighs the cost of shipping. So like if you can buy a bunch of them, you get free shipping or whatever. So you can get that price cut on no shipping by having 2 friends or 3 friends go in and buy like, oh, I needed 20 snails or 15 snails. Well, all of you are doing that. You hit your 100 quantity and you're good to go.
Right. Mm-hmm. All right, let's move down and wrap this up. We're going to talk about some of the tech that you can put into your tank, and some of the brands and stuff that are good for it, and some of the essential pieces of equipment you're going to want, or possibly haven't thought about. So first and foremost, this is the most, a lot of people consider this one of the most frivolous pieces of equipment to spend money on, but to me, it is cheap insurance, and that's the controller. So adding a controller to your tank puts a whole new level of control over everything, not just, being able to make a heater work, but turning pumps on and off, seeing when things fail, being able to monitor pH. A lot of people that become intermediate or advanced reef keepers kind of poo-poo pH a little bit, but when nothing else is there, keeping an eye on pH and seeing that it's the same pH up and down while you're gone is a quick indicator to at least say nothing's gone haywire in my tank. That's if you can get, if you move into an automated control, an automated tester like a Trident or an Alcatronic or something like that. I've said it a million times. To me, alkalinity, a daily alkalinity check is the quickest way to get a good swipe of the health of your tank. If your alkalinity stays where it's supposed to be, you can feel pretty good knowing that your calc and your mag are somewhere in the realm of proper, where they should be. And if you can see it over a period of time, you can feel pretty good knowing that the general health of your tank is okay when nothing else is there for you to see or do. So in this game now, we've been talking about it. We have the Hydros controller now, which is new into the play here. You have the Neptune Apex, you have the GHL system. They're kind of the primary 3 players in the market. You do have eCoral. They are another company. I don't know, Devin, you hear much from their front lately?
No, it's definitely been a while. Still have one. I think my temperature probe died, but otherwise it's been solid.
Mine
still.
did too, and that's weird. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I have one as well, and it was a fine price. I'm still pretty sure they're available, but they're just not as mainstream. You're not going to find them on any of the mainstream websites or whatever the case is. But yeah, controller to me, a lot of people say, yeah, that's kind of the Cadillac, but boy, is it nice to drive a Cadillac. Let me tell you.
And
So.
It's peace of mind, right?
In my opinion, it's becoming more and more affordable. Like when I first got in, I thought, oh my God, it's just way out of my league. But if you look at like cumulatively the money you spend on a ton of different gear and things, that's like small money to control all of it and have like one interface. It's like, hey, I've got this, and this going on. I know it's all working. I know this is good. My power consumption's the same. All these things like you can look at from afar and be really confident that your system's just going smooth.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a good point and view. And again, Hydros is new into the industry, and they're coming in at a price point for their Hydros 2, which has limited functionality, but it has enough functionality to give you an insight into your tank for $200 that you never had before, in my opinion. So
and it's fully upgrade ready. Like you can use that piece and then add to, right? Like you can just add more pieces as you want.
Exactly. So control. I highly recommend if you're not running a controller and you've always been apprehensive either because of the price or you felt like it was daunting. Again, I'm not pushing Hydros for the sake. I do truly believe that it's a good product. Devin, I saw you just got a Hydro, so you're going to be trying one out. I saw you posted it up on Facebook, I believe.
I do.
Yeah,
Instagram, Facebook, one of the two. I haven't even opened it yet. Probably tomorrow.
Yeah, you got to play with the sensor. But the reason I do keep bringing it up, and I have thousands of dollars worth of Apex equipment. My whole system still runs Apex right now. The reason I keep bringing up the Hydros is because it does come at a very different price point for an entry-level piece of equipment. So for the first time, people that maybe have poo-pooed getting a controller because they're like, why do I need to spend, $500, $600, $700? Maybe $200 is desirable for you to give you some level of automation and monitoring. So
yes.
All right, moving down the
list.
list.
With my Apex, controlling 2 heaters currently, but I have more in the works for that. And I do have the Hydro system coming to test out as well.
Yeah, nice. So all right, return pumps. Go ahead, Jeremy. You take that one.
All right, so return pumps, I think, are one of the best bang for buck options you can get because unless you're going like really super high end with Royal Exclusive or ABIZ, you're able to get really good bang for your buck overall. Like you can buy a CJ Syncra SEC, which is a beast of a pump with tons of functionality and Wi-Fi app control for not a lot of money. You can buy the Reef Breeders Coral Box DCA series and it's compatible with an Apex. You can get my Reef Octopus Varios. Will work with, I think, both Apex or Hydros, and it's
native with the Wave engine. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's so many options out there that are affordable, good, and like really solid quality pumps that this is like the place where you're spending your money and getting the absolute most for it.
Right. Yeah, and obviously you need a return pump. Don't confuse this part of the conversation with here's equipment you may or may not want. We're talking more. Here are some options within return pumps that have things like Wi-Fi controllability or controller integration or whatever. That are some good choices. If you are maybe just running an AC pump and you just plug it in, turn it on, but maybe you want a little more out of it or something. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. So
thank you.
Yeah. All right, Devin, water movement. How about you, buddy? What do you think about that?
Battery backup.
Yes.
Whatever you pick, ideally do something that can be battery backup, which I still need to do in my frag tank, but I have battery backup on my big tank. So it's just so important because if there is a power outage, something happens, without flow, things are going to start dying off, right? So having flow will save your tank. So even if you don't do a controller, battery backup, some form of flow on your power heads goes a long way. Keep your tank happy.
Yeah, and I mean, in this field, there's so many options. You have gyres, MPs, RPM, that just give you solid, consistent performance. But one of the biggest things that's new to this market is the Hydros Wave engine. Jeremy, you run the Wave engine. I have a Wave engine coming. I just ordered to run my gyres, and I actually have another gyre coming. I'm going to be running 2 gyres now. But it's a nice tool to kind of create multiple optimal flow patterns. But the key to this is, it lets you work with a ton of different pumps. So your existing pumps may work with it. If it's a pump that's within the Coral View family, Reef Octopus, Max Spect, Ice Cap, and some other ones in there too, you can eliminate the power supply. This can provide 20-volt power, so you can get rid of a ton of cords too, which in the grand scheme of things can be really nice. If you're not running pumps that have battery backups native, you can now run your Hydros wave engine off of an APC backup or something like that, and it's going to power all your pumps. Or you create a mode called the low power mode or something, and it just runs one pump in a power failure mode or something of that nature.
Yes, and I think that's a brilliant setup, man. Yeah, I love it. And the other option with that, which is great, is like you're on the go and you want to turn off your pumps and have kind of a simulated feed mode. You can do it through that app while the person's at your house. Hey, text me when you get there. Boom, off, go. It feeds. It doesn't all overflow. They get the food. The people can leave. 10 minutes later, you turn the pumps back on. It's good to go.
And then for our advanced mind people, you could totally use the 0 to 10 inputs to create a big giant red push button. Get like an easy button and put feed on it instead of easy, and mount that to the side of your tank and just have them hit that and flip it into feed mode. So
oh my God, I love that.
Fun projects you can do with 0 to 10 inputs.
Nice. That's fun.
So we talked heaters before too. Like we said, redundancy on several levels when it comes to heaters is smart. I've always, like I said, used the 2 smaller titanium heating elements with their own kind of inline controllers, and then a system controller to work as my failsafe. So like I have them set to go on or off, and then just a little fraction higher, my controller is set to say, no, I'm cutting power to that source.
Yep. Yeah.
Nice.
Again, invest in extras. Keep one on the shelf. Whatever you're running, keep an extra on the shelf to have it there. If you're running duals, which is a smart way to go, one goes down, you'll notice maybe your tank's struggling to keep up, or it's a little lower in temperature. Easy to have somebody just unplug and plug one in, even if they just dangle it into your sump and don't, rehang it or whatever. At least it'll get back in there and working. So,
Devin, do you have a particular brand you like for heaters?
I used to always use the Ehi ones. Lately, I've been using the titanium BRS ones because I like how tiny they are.
Yeah,
like they're super compact, which was a big thing because the Eheims are like, maybe I can fit in this chamber, maybe I can't.
That was the same reason I switched, because they had the desirable length for where I wanted to put them. I used to use the same thing, use the titanium ones that were like this long, So I switched over to those because they have really compact. And then I use that beautiful acrylic two
Thanks for rubbing it in.
2-heater holder. So
I want one, but they're freaking.
I got it ages ago from BRS. I don't know if BRS is still selling them or not, but I know they're out of stock everywhere. Who makes them?
Melevs makes some too, right?
I don't know. I think he does. I heard somebody say that,
Reef.
but
I think we talked about it. It was like my news article one week.
Could have been, yeah. But whoever I forget who the company is that makes them for the BRS ones. What's that, Devin?
Zenreef.
Zenreef, yes, thank you, Zenreef. I got one. It's a beautiful piece of kit. So, all right, let's move on here. Lighting, LED and LED hybrid systems. They seem to be the most popular choices these days. Ton of functionality and controllability. Again, if you want something to be able to, and again, lighting's kind of set and forget. Hopefully, you're not doing much. If you want to, consider getting some sort of lighting that is, if you're running a controller, is compatible with your controller to be able to be controlled, or has its own cloud-based controlling app like the Mobius for Ecotech or something like that. So just look in if you want that controllability on the go. I don't really know why it would matter. Make sure you look into what the ecosystem is, or if it's cloud-based, to be able to change it while you're on the go.
On that note, if you're on the go, you probably shouldn't be screwing with your lighting when you're not there to actually see it.
Yep.
Fact. And even if you're running like a camera in the room or something, it's still not going to be a good representation of what's really going on. So,
don't tweak your tank from afar when you're not actually there to make sure it's all good.
All right, Jeremy or Devin, whoever wants it, protein skimmers.
Go, Devin.
Empty it before you leave on your trip. Otherwise, I mean, protein skimmers they do the same thing, right? Some are slightly more efficient, some will suck in more air. They're all going to do the job. Big thing is if you're going away, make sure you have something to deal with so your cup potentially doesn't overflow. Maybe you do a dryer skim. Maybe use one of the little freaking nasty skimmer lockers to hold all that stinky skimmate.
Yep.
Maybe you put in a little optical sensor in it to shut it off if it gets too high, but just do something so you don't have to worry about it potentially overflowing.
Yeah, brand wise, there's a million brands out there, and that all are good and work and do the same thing. But maybe one other thing you might want to do, and I've never run one. Maybe one of you guys do is an auto neck cleaner. Unless you're really gone for extended periods of time, I don't know how worthwhile that is as an investment, specifically as an investment for itself. Your skimmer will run fine dirty while for a short period of time. So I don't, if you got one for some reason or you want one for some other reason, great. It's nothing I don't think I would add specifically to help make my life any easier for travel.
Yeah, but it is an option.
It is an option. It's there too. So
it makes you skim a little bit better. It makes it skim a little bit better, right?
Yeah, more efficient while you're cleaner. So for sure.
Yeah.
I do like the skimmate locker idea. I mean, like I have a tube that mine runs to that it's as long as it's covered, make sure it's covered. Like, don't leave this open. You're not going to be a popular person in your household if you have just open skimmate sitting around. But if you can, do a 5-gallon bucket or a 2.5-gallon bucket with a lid and have it be good to go, especially if you tend to run your skimmer wet, it can really work. But that's also something to keep an eye on. You're going to make sure you're not pulling out a ton of water while skimming and dumping it 2.5 gallons away. So that might be a good reason to have a sensor maybe in that locker that turns it off. If this is full now, turn off the skimmer.
Yeah, a lot of people do. If they're running a locker, they'll run some sort of float sensor or something. But now, again, with the hydros, they do have a specific skimmer sensor. So,
yep.
All right, ATO, it's a must-have, got to have, especially if you travel. Having an ATO is not enough. Having an adequate water supply for the ATO to work with is really the key here. So just about everybody that's going to be running a reef tank will understand early on the importance of an ATO and have one. But while traveling, the quantity of storage is the thought. In the past, before I had Devin, I see Devin smirking in there. In the past, when I would travel, before I had these 100-gallon tanks, I would make up a couple 32-gallon tanks or whatever and run external. And it looked horrible, but nobody was going to be there to see it or care. I just needed to know I had enough tank. Or I would have jugs and a transfer pump there if the person that was house sitting for us wasn't able to lift up a jug and pour it in. They had a little pump to transfer it into the chamber. But the key is, I mean, there's a ton of options out there. Jeremy, I know you really like Logan's Reef Breeders ATO. Yeah. I use that. I think it's a great little piece of kit. I've had good luck with the Apex ATO. I'm about to try the Hydros ATO to see how it goes. I've actually had really, really good luck for a long time, and I finally stopped using them because I replaced things with my Apex system. But Innovative Marine made their titanium ATO system. And you can find those for short money, and that was a really great system too. But the key is make sure you have the water available for the ATO, not just the ATO. Devin, what were you itching to say?
Oh, okay. So one, like you mentioned, make sure you have a nice big storage container to have that extra capacity while you're away for extended period of time. And make sure there's a siphon break on it.
Good point.
I was at my wedding, my buddy, one of my other friends was looking after his tank, and he didn't put a siphon break on it. So he had his 35-gallon brute trash can, and we got this photo from my buddy, and it was literally, his sump was filled to the brim. It literally, one more millimeter of height and it would have overflowed. It was like the closest thing ever where it equalized with the brute container. Where we looked at it, we're just
that's
like,
a good point. A lot of people forget about that. So most ATOs now will come with a siphon break in the kit. Be sure to use it. Make sure you understand how it works, because it can be a little weird where you need to place them or the direction you place them in, but use it. It's even if you think you've positioned the height properly and you're like, there's no way this can create a siphon, you will be shocked how that little tubing can create a siphon. So good tip, Devin. That's a big one. So
Devin, what size
what size chamber do you use, and what do you use to hold your ATO for your reservoir?
Well, I have a 40-gallon one for the water box.
Yeah.
Which is just like a reservoir with my little mixing station, so it pulls right from there. And I got a little optical sensor in the bottom, so when it's just about empty, it refills itself.
Nice.
And then I got Crafty on the frag tank, and that one has a 10-gallon one on that one. And every 3 or 4 days, it turns my RDI on for like 4 hours to refill that one.
Oh, nice.
Nice.
Yeah, so it works pretty good.
Yeah, that's I keep thinking about, again, adding a small frag tank, but I'm like, I'm so used to automation. How would I tie this in? And so I keep thinking about how I would get it tied into the other systems to automate it. So, but discussion for another day.
Yes,
All right,
it
moving
is.
down the list, auto feeders. You know, this can be a lifesaver for you if you can't find somebody to babysit your fish. However, take them with a grain of salt. Reliability isn't always there for them, and there's a million different kinds. Do your research, spend money, and it's not much more money, but spend money on a decent one that's known. But the biggest recommendation I'll have for you is, if you're going to use one, research what what is the best one to use, but then also try to find people that are using it and ask them what food they've had success with, because food can be a make or break on these. Like Apex has an automatic feeder that goes with the Apex system, and they have specific food that they used to distribute with it. I believe it was from who did their food? It was from Chad.
Yeah,
Reef Nutrition.
Yeah. TDO.
TDO.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It was a special blend TDO made specifically for Apex that they would include. So I don't know if you can still get that or not, but it worked the best in their feeder, or worked really well in their feeder. So that's the key. And then one other tip with an auto feeder: don't just change your fish's world. If you feed frozen food all the time and you're just going to go away, don't expect that they'll just eat flaky food. Now, if you have big hungry hippo fish, maybe they will. Try out the food before you go and make sure everybody's eating it before you just decide to dump it on them.
Yes.
And have it all sit there. And then also try to find a food that is kind of neutrally buoyant and has a longer linger time in the column, so it gives the best opportunity for your fish to get it, because your fish might not be used to where the food's coming from. So it might take them a little while to figure out that the food now comes from one area over in the corner of the tank, as opposed to you feeding from the center or something. So always a good idea to start, maybe if you're going to be using one or know you have to, use it while you are at home, or maybe start feeding over from where you're going to have it from the side, and just get the fish used to the fact that food's going to be coming from there too.
Smart. I like that.
Nice.
Also, a little low-tech automation we could talk about. I've always found the old school, like, analog timers to be really helpful. They just work. You can simply add a time on off functionality, and they're like $5, like literally the cheapest piece of equipment you can buy besides like a net or something. I actually still use it. This is how I turn on and off my hybrid T5 fixture, the Aquatic Life. I have it on a timer, so it comes on the same time every single day.
Why do you not have that on your Apex?
Because the cordage doesn't go very far.
Well, get extension cord. Fool. Jeez Louise.
Well, I'm the worst at using controllers. We've discussed this.
Oh my! Devin, you see what I'm dealing with here? Come on.
I feel like I should just Amazon you one.
I seriously
just help you out here.
I feel like I should just, when this podcast is over, I'm gonna get on and send you like 2 6-foot cords with cord locks and stuff, and just be. I cannot believe. A, I'm hearing this for the first time, and B, that's actually how you're controlling these lights when you have an Apex with literally one thing plugged into it. 8-bar Apex with one plug in it.
No, there's like 4 in it now. There's 4.
Oh, okay.
I see so many people that even have like an Apex or something, and it's not even programmed. They just use it for the on and off, and I'm just like, so
that's this guy right here.
Yep.
So
hey, buddy.
Yeah, to add to this too, it's not necessarily low tech, but there is a whole world of smart plugs that are relatively cheap now, that are cloud controllable. So again, most of them have a function to have a timer built into them, either through the Amazon app or their own app or whatever it is. So you can have them come on and off in a time interval. So that's kind of the equivalent of what Jeremy was just talking about. And they're down now. They're so cheap. You can always find them $5-10 on Amazon, and it gives you a little more functionality than an old analog timer does. But it also gives you the ability to see when it's on and off too. So just one extra little thing that can be standalone. That's kind of like standalone pseudo self-made automation kind of thing. Same thing with bar. I think Amazon makes a whole 4 or 8 port power strip, and each port is controllable or whatever. So you could kind of build your own pseudo controller that I wouldn't put a ton of faith in unless you were really just turning like lights on and off. I don't think I'd ever plug a heater or anything into it, but anyways, you could. So. All right, last but not least, we talked about this, so we'll be brief on this, is smart security cams.
Yes.
Super cheap, affordable. You place it, again, whether you want that many cameras on while you're there, up to you. But while you're gone, at least you could put them around the tank. You can stick one. A lot of them have suction cup things or magnetic things. You can literally, I used to have one. Whoa, there goes my mic. I put the little metal disc on the side of the stand, and I had the camera there, like magneted right up against, and it was a beautiful picture. Like, it was weird because it was long and it really kind of got distorted lengthwise, but I mean, super clear. So, and I do really like the idea too, if you're having somebody come into your house that isn't well acquainted with your system and a reef keeper, or B, don't know anything but just coming in to feed, having a camera plugged in under the sump next to it that they could pick up and show you things if they have a problem or a question is just a $10-20 piece of insurance that goes a long way. So
yes,
wise.
Or go ahead,
if you have, or just good old video call, FaceTime, whatever.
That's true too. I never give enough credence to FaceTime or Messenger calls and stuff too. I just never, I don't know why I don't think about them, but for that kind of stuff, like, and true. Yeah. Most people have smartphones that have some sort of app. You can do a video call with them too. So good point, Devin. Look at the big brain on Devin.
Yeah. Making it easy. Making it easy.
Isn't that your whole slogan?
Yeah. Making reefing easy.
Like
what we're here for.
Boom. Nice tie. Jeremy, you got anything to add to that camera discussion?
There's so many like 3-packs out there. You could easily set yourself up with like a main view, kind of a back plumbing view, and your sump, and have yourself set to like really look at your whole system. So there's a ton of options that could be really easy and useful, and they're pretty easy to set up, right?
Super easy. Usually have some sort of QR code on it. You open the app, scan it with your camera, has you connect to its local Wi-Fi, and then boom, done. You add it to your Wi-Fi and you're on the system. Keeping one in your sump stand, and having it there so you can look at your sump anytime you want and see if a piece of equipment is on the fritz or something of that nature. So
yeah. All right.
I think, we've covered all of that. So even with all the planning, the automation, the equipment, everything else, really going to be helpful to just have some reefing friends, have a spouse that cares about your tanks, or a significant other, perhaps.
Yes.
Friendly neighbor, a reef club, be part of a reef club, whatever it is. If you are going to be gone for an extended period of time, having somebody you can rely on, whether they're knowledgeable or not, goes a long way. And as Jeremy mentioned before, no matter who it is, even if it's a best friend or a wife or whatever, always be sure to thank them. Because honestly, when you think about, a well-established tank, how much money you have. I mean, I have a koi tank. If something happened to him while my neighbors were feeding him or something, like, I'd be beside myself. But unless I, legitimately saw one of the kids like grab it and throw it out of the tank or something, like, I can't be that upset with them. But they're also aware of how pricey that fish is, and still are accepting the responsibility to come in and feed my tank. So be sure to thank whoever it is, no matter who they are, even if it's your spouse, significant other, whatever. Get them something nice from wherever you are. Take them out for dinner, buy them beer, whatever the case is. Thank them. Make sure you provide them with a plan that doesn't stress them out, well documented. Make a video, write a checklist, whatever it is. if they're not a reef keeper, they're going to thank you for taking the stress off of them by
Right.
clearly documenting it. And then it's going to take the stress off of you knowing that there's no ambiguity about what they're doing or what they should be doing.
Yes. A laminated checklist, like you were saying, something
Yep.
you can hang in the tank. They can go, boom, I did this, I did this, I did this. Good to go. Dry erase markers, super cheap, all set, good to go. A video like you created, awesome option. We all get by with a little help from our friends, right? Like make it easy on them so they can help you out.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Last but not least, if all else fails and you're like Jeremy and just have no friends,
Hey.
Jeremy Byrne, uh, you can hire a service company. You're not going to like what it costs to have a service company come in every day and feed your fish. However, when all else fails, you can get by. Maybe your livestock is set up where it's not ideal, but they could be fed every other day and you're going for a week. So maybe a service company can come in a handful of times or whatever the case is. But when all else fails, call around your local fish stores, find out what service contracts they have available. If it's something they're willing to do, get a cost for it. Maybe if it is a 5-minute feeding and it's in between two stops they have, you could get a good deal with them. This comes back to being well acquainted with your local fish store. Support them,
Yes.
know your people there. So when you are in need of something, you're not a stranger. You're part of their business and community, and maybe they're willing to work with you and help you out or whatever the case is. So just a final option there.
And if it really comes down to that, like, man, fish can go 3-4 days without eating. They'll be fine for the most part, unless you have somebody that's like on the cusp of death already or not like healthy. 3 or 4 day gap without like getting food from you, they're gonna pick at the algae in the tank. They're gonna find detritus. They're gonna find something to eat. They'll be fine. So like a one-time visit might work.
A weekend's probably fine, right?
Yeah.
If you're gone for a few weeks, I mean, that's another story. But if
Yeah.
you're gone for a weekend, you're probably fine.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. But yeah, if you go on a week and you're leaving on a Sunday, you feed good and heavy then, and have somebody come in on a Wednesday and you're back on a Saturday, you could probably go. It's not ideal. Like I wouldn't want to do that, but if you have to, if it's a vacation and all else fails, yeah, it's a place to go.
Yeah.
And then finally too, service company can be an emergency backup.
Yeah.
If you have somebody watching your tank and maybe you're traveling out of country or something, having a plan with a service company for the person that's watching your house to be able to call and say, there's water leaking, there's water overflowing, and have them be prepared, have your credit card on file or whatever it takes for them to get out and deal with what's going on is the kind of the final icing on the cake for your all-inclusive plan. So
Yes.
I think that covers it.
Yeah,
Devin,
I think so too.
How do you feel about all this?
I
Good?
think your tanks are all good to go for just about anything now. We got it all.
The one thing we didn't cover, and we have we have other podcasts about it, are power outages. If you have a power outage while you're gone, again, we talked about battery backups in here and stuff. If you have an extended power outage while you're gone, that's a whole other level of planning. So it wasn't worth addressing here. We do have a couple episodes on generators and storm prep. We have a whole episode on hurricane prep and stuff too. So go check those out. We'll link to those in the show notes, and you can go listen to those if you're new to the podcast here through Devin's group. And but that's a whole extensive thing. So we're making the assumption that while you're gone, you have no major outages like that. This is just prepping your tank for a normal, non-crazy trip away. All right, I think that's it, man. 2-hour episode. That's a good one. I like it. So our fans of the long episodes will be happy to have that. So Devin, I thank you so much for having us on. It was a pleasure as always to come on to your outlet and be able to share what we do with you. And then as always, I mean, we for a long stretch, your name was mentioned on like at least once per show for like 3 months straight. Like
I know you're slacking lately. The love is gone.
No.
Well, hey, it's on lockdown. We're forgetting about everything. We forget other people even exist. So
that's fair. No, I thank you guys for coming on. It was fun today to do something different. I like it.
Yeah. And Jeremy, as always, thank you, my friend. Big shout out to all our sponsors, Fritz, Seache, Reef Breeders, our media sponsors, Reef.com, Reef to Reef, our good buddy Remy over at Bahama Llama Corals. Go check him out. I think that, Devin, huge shout out to your sponsors. Who do you got? You got Brightwell Aquatics. You got
Brightwell and BRS.
Yeah. Huge shout out to those guys. And huge shout out to everybody here, to the whole Reef Dudes family, everybody that was on the live stream tonight. Guys, thanks for listening. To the RNN Nation, thank you for listening. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Like, subscribe, Devin. Reef Dudes, make sure you get him if you're here on our behalf and not even new to Reef Dudes. Be sure to check him out. Amazing content. Devin often does the work for you. So if you want to not read instructions but learn how to use something, catch a Devin video, because he's probably reviewed it and done a setup video on it, and it makes life way, way easier than reading anything. And he has just such that soothing Canadian voice.
So polite, Devin. We love chatting with you, buddy.
Thank you.
I just love, I don't even know why. Like, it's not, you don't even, well, nah, every now and again you say like a, or like a little Canadian sneaks in, but I think the funniest part about the Canadian stereotypes is they're not bad. Like, it's, if somebody said, "No, man, you're so polite," I'd be like, "Thank you."
Yeah, I'm reinforcing it, but thank you very much.
But yeah, all right, guys. Well, thank you again to everybody. Stay safe, stay happy, healthy, all that good stuff. Hope your tank prospers. And Jeremy, you know what to do.
Stay fishy, friends.
Peace.
This just in.
All right, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. A little bit different tonight, but it's kind of fun. So big thanks, Peter and Jeremy, for coming on.
Thank you.
And if you haven't checked them out, Reef News Network on any of your podcast audio type of platforms.
Yes.
If you guys enjoyed it, hit that like button, and I'll see you guys